Emo Kwathquake Quinnipiac. Really good to see you. We're going to get started here for the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. I'm the chair, Richard Hardy. My Comox name is Namuguis. We'll get started with a recognition of the traditional territories of the Comox people. And just a reminder to our friends and visitors here, we do have exits. So for emergency purposes, we got an exit to the left, or my left, and also an exit to the right. There's also washrooms in behind in the hallway behind me here. And we'll get started with our delegations. So first delegation, if I understand correctly, is Kellen Truitt from Ministry of Transportation. Welcome, Kellen.
Morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. As mentioned, my name is Kellen Truitt. So I'm the operations manager with the Ministry of Transportation for the North Island service area. And I've prepared a brief presentation to provide everyone today, which I'll go through shortly. Maybe I'll just take a quick chance here to let the others in our group do their introductions as well.
Good morning. I'm Mike Pearson. I'm the director for Vancouver Island District, and I work with Kellen.
Hi, Chris Cowley, General Manager of Main Road North Island Contracting. So I'm the General Manager of Kellen's contracting company.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, if everyone's good, I'll get my presentation loaded up here.
Are you sharing the screen, Kellen, or did you want Lisa to pull it up for you?
Hey, how's that? Can everyone see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks. I'll get started here. All right, so this is our 2023 Service Area 3 North Island update. So on the agenda today, I'd like to talk about our highways and regional services, just an overview of who we are and what we do. We'll do a more detailed overview of the North Island Service Area 3. Take some time to discuss our various maintenance services. We'd like to talk specifically about winter maintenance as well. And then take a little bit of time to run through our program from the last year, 22 to 23, and an upcoming look at our 2023 program. And then at the end, if there's some time and some questions on the presentation, please feel free. Okay, this is just a quick overview of our district, the Vancouver Island District. So you can see briefly there, we're divided into 3 separate service areas. We are, of course, the North Island area. Okay, to go over our highways and regional services. So our mandate is to operate, maintain, build, and enforce a safe, resilient, and integrated transportation network across BC. So some of the key services that we provide and deliver are developing, maintaining, and operating safe, secure provincial and regional transportation networks. Lead the ministry in provincial issue management, emergency response, and preservation of infrastructure. We're also involved in planning and delivery of rehabilitation and capital projects in the regions, supporting provincial economic growth through regional work and development services, and implementing sustainable, resilient, and innovative transportation solutions. Just a little bit on what we do. So more specifically to our service area, Area 3, the North Island. So you can see us there. So our area extends from Cook Creek Road in the south all the way up to Port Hardy in the north and the Northern Gulf Islands. Our area includes numbered routes such as Highway 19, 19A, 28 out to Cold River, and Highway 30 out to Port Ellis. We have about 3,800 lane kilometers of maintained road, 11 rest areas, and 312 structures. So we have a highway maintenance agreement with Main Road North Island Contracting. It's a 10-year agreement, currently runs 2018 to 2023, or sorry, to 2028. So we're about halfway through now. And current contract value is 22.5 million. So within our service area, we have 9 separate maintenance yards. These are located in Cumberland, on Denman and Hornby Island, Campbell River, Quadra Island, Cortez Island, Gold River, Sayward, and Port McNeil. Now, just to provide a brief overview of the maintenance services that we provide. So broadly, they can be classified into either routine or quantified services. So routine services are works where the quantity of the work is determined primarily by the response frequency. So this would include different activities. I've listed a few key ones here, such as temporary pavement patching, surface cleaning, debris removal, snow removal, litter collection, sign cleaning, traffic management, or incident response. Then we have quantified services, which are annual quantities allocated to meet the needs of the area and the infrastructure. So these will tend to be more specific to the needs of each service area. And some key examples here include permanent pavement patching, grading, dust control, ditch maintenance, vegetation control, brushing, culvert replacement, sign replacement, and structure maintenance. That is just a brief overview of the maintenance services that we provide. I did have some key stats here on winter maintenance to run through as well. So just quickly, this year so far, and it's definitely not isolated to this year, we've seen challenging temperature fluctuations throughout the winter season. During our December and January snow events, our contractors put out about 390 metric tons of crystal salt, 4,071 tons of winter sand, and about 1.6, almost 1.7 million liters of brine, and that's within the CVRD area. So they have about 16 plow units which are deployed, with the exception of mechanical downtime, 21 operators working 10 to 12 hour shifts, and 5 subcontractors which are used for support. Okay, now just to speak to some key contacts for both the ministry and Main Road for this area. So we have a road area manager who's our local contact, Marissa Beniski, and she will be the local boots on the ground person who's dealing with day-to-day operations within this area. I have myself, the operations manager, Mike Pearson, our director, and I've also included our traffic management center, TMC BC, and that's their number there, the 1-800 or 511, and they are also affiliated with Drive BC. And then on Main Road side, we've included Justin Burgess, the operations manager, and Chris, the general manager, who's on with us today. And we've also got the 24-hour hotline listed there, which can be called anytime for information, reporting conditions, or requesting services. Okay, now I'd just like to move on to our, I mentioned our previous year's program. So here's just a few, and I'll go into more detail on these, some of our key projects that we've completed over the past year. All right, so firstly, Knight Road, we've completed resurfacing and shoulder widening. The scope of this project was resurfacing of 5.2 lane kilometers, shoulder widening and paving, minor geometric improvements, and culvert replacements. This project was valued at 2.85 million. We also did overlay patching on South Farnham Road. The scope of this project was overlay patching, providing a smooth, stable riding surface. This included about 16,000 square meters of patching completed and valued at 582,000. Okay, so we've done drainage improvements primarily on Cumberland and Denman Island area over the past year. So this included ditch maintenance, sod removal, shoulder stripping. This is all to help maintain an efficient road drainage system. And this work is valued at 1.3 million. We've also completed some roadside barrier improvements along Strathcona Parkway up to the Mount Washington Ski Hill. And the scope of this project is replacement and realignment of concrete roadside barrier, provides a barrier for motorists from hazards beyond the travel surface, and value there was 84,000. All right, and anyone who's driven along Highway 19 between here and Kemp River has likely seen our vegetation, our wildlife exclusion fencing. This helps to keep our highway safe by keeping animals on the right side of it. This all obviously requires ongoing maintenance for us to be able to access the fence for inspecting, for doing repairs and various works. So we've done a considerable amount of clearing over the past year, valued at 165,000, to be able to ensure that we're able to continue to access this. Okay, and now just moving forward to a quick look at our 2023 program. So some of the projects we have planned for the upcoming year include asphalt resurfacing, Highway 19A in the Courtenay area, as well as along Strathcona Parkway. So we're going to be performing surface improvements and culvert replacement. This is including 12 road kilometers of Highway 19A north of Courtenay and 2.8 road kilometers on Strathcona Parkway. We're also planning expansion bridge joint replacement. This is one of our structures along Highway 19, Sable River Bridge, which is south of Buckley Bay, and we'll be replacing the bridge deck joint system at the south end of the structure. That should be some considerable work coming up in the spring. We'll be performing electric vehicle charging station improvements at Buckley Bay Rest Area, and that should be coming online again later this year, and various guide sign replacements along our highways and side roads. That's just a quick look ahead at our 2023 program. And that's everything I've got for today. So thank you, everybody. And if there's any questions, please feel free.
Thanks for the presentation, Kellen. Director Arbor.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, Kelly. Thanks for coming to present to us as an annual. I don't know if staff have been in touch, but I think as part of our advocacy, we're looking to see if we could have more regular meetings with Moti, I think, for maybe 4 times a year or something like that. And maybe some of them could be with elected officials and some with staff, but we've had those discussions learning from what's happening, for example, on the Sunshine Coast, where I think there's a really tight and more regular meetings between the two. And the reason for that is not because there's huge problems, but I think it's more a question of opportunities. And also roads is definitely what our constituents regards as the biggest service that the CVRD delivers. And as you know, we don't deliver it. So we get definitely a lot of feedback and continued questions. And even after 50 years of this arrangement with regional districts and the Ministry of Transportation, I think the public still thinks that local government looks after roads. So I'm really happy with your report and some of the improvements you've done the last couple of years. There's really good projects, and I think it bodes well for the future as well. We in the rural areas, I think there's increased interest, as you know, in active transportation, and we're starting to see more money coming through the province and even the federal government on that. So I'm sure you're aware of our ambitious plan for active transportation that we created a couple of years ago, and we'll be really happy to work with you and your team to see how we can fund it or advance some of these projects in the future. I know in my area around Royston, there's a lot of excitement around doing some improvement near the school and trying to provide both better safety for kids and as well as active transportation improvements. Another thing I really appreciate, I've had my electric car for 7 years now, and the Buckley Bay station was key in those first years, and I've really missed the station at Buckley Bay because I have an old model that only has 100-kilometer range, no leaf, and without that station, it's been difficult to plan trips to Hornby and into town. And so I'm really pleased to see, hopefully you have some solutions for it. It was vandalized twice, which was really disheartening. And I'm hoping that this will stop. I know you've installed cameras, everything else. So I'm hoping that we'll either catch the culprits or else find a way so that it's not as easy to cut the cord, so to speak. And on that topic, that's another topic that I think we'd love to explore with you. We see the province this weekend announce the electrification of BC Ferries, $500 million investment, and electrification of everything else. BC Transit is heading that way. And as we know, we are so far behind in the electric infrastructure in terms of what other countries have put in. And so I know it's a shared responsibility, and BC Hydro is doing some efforts, but as well with you, it'd be nice to talk about future plans if beyond the Buckley base stations, if there's other projects we could collaborate on to improve the charging infrastructure in the valley. That would be wonderful. And then just as a question, just a couple of things. I'll just have two items today. One is there's rumors on Hornby that some of the gravel roads might get the chip seal over, take places that have never been, like Slade Road. I don't know if you have updates on that or if it's just a rumor in the community. And the second was the ditches along McLeod Road in Union Bay. I think I've raised it every year. There was a pothole that's been there for 5 years at the corner of 5th. I've raised it every time. Apparently it's been filled the last couple of months, but apparently the drainage issue is still there. So it's starting to cave in again. So just those two. I don't know if you have any feedback. I realize that's probably more for main roads, but just curious if you have any information. And happy for feedback as well, if you'd be happy to meet a little bit more regularly, either with staff or elected officials.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. No, thank you very much. Yeah, with a new chip seal on Hornby Island. So no, I don't believe any new changes at this time. Generally, we would work either directly ourselves if it's a project we're putting together, or with Main Road if it's something we're doing through our maintenance project program to change the surface type. So yeah, nothing there to bring up at this time. And I think Chris Phillips can probably speak to the ditching and pothole on the cloud. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, sure. If it's the pothole, I think it is. It's just on the shoulder there. Yeah, it's a shoulder rut, I believe. That yeah, there's a bit of a base issue there, and people take the corner and get rid of the gravel. So every large truck that goes around undoes any work we do. So I mean, we can look at expanding the shoulder or trying a different material potentially, but it is definitely in those kind of spots, it's an ongoing issue. We're constantly filling it in, and out it comes the next day. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few spots like that within the service area, certainly. We're on top of them, but I can see why it would look like they haven't been done, because it disappears quite quickly. And then as far as the ditching, I mean, all the ditching's done sort of by a priority, and it is a common stakeholder issue for sure, because the ditches are mostly done on a priority based on the infrastructure, not necessarily on properties or things like that. So if the ditch is working well for the infrastructure as it currently sits, it kind of gets kicked down the priority list. And that's kind of how we work that.
Edwin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for once again coming before us. But I don't know about Mike's window there. It looks like he's got snow coming down. I'm just wondering why you guys aren't grabbing a shovel and going out and cleaning the roads for us right now. Seriously though, we just
I'm not in the BCGU. I'm not allowed to.
Not allowed to yet. It's contracted. Yeah, so you probably know we just finished our silly season here with municipal elections, and the number one issues you can more around roads and MOTI responsibilities like flooding and culverts and ditches and road and potholes. Knocked on one guy's door and he started off on the potholes, and I said, well, actually that's the provincial government issue. He looked at me, he says, I'm not voting for you, and slammed the door. So we get it all the time too. I do like the stats you bring up. I know that quite often I get rumblings in my community about, well, if we did our own roads, we'd do it better. Well, I think you made a good point here. We got was it 22.5 million sorry, 3,990.7 tons of salt, 4,071 tons of sand, and then 1,689,481 liters of brine. So you couple that with the manpower and the trucks and everything else, I think it would absolutely bankrupt the electoral area service budget if we had to do that. So hats off to you. I understand that, we do need to get together more than once a year. Some of the questions from my constituents, especially the Macaulay Road bunch, being that they've got over 2,000 people on that road, and it's a one-way in, one-way out. The question would be around how do they move up the ladder in what class of road they are when it comes to priority over road clearing. I think at one time we actually had a conference with the electoral area directors, usually in the fall, around that, how the designation was done, but that hasn't happened for, oh golly, probably a decade. So I'm just wondering if that's something we could look into.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. Yeah, and we have actually had some communication with the neighborhood association out on Macaulay Road ourselves, and so we provided some detail on how our road classification system works. It is primarily based on traffic volume and usage. So yeah, in short, it is something that we do review over time to make sure it's consistent with with current laws and what we're seeing out there. And we have definitely communicated to the neighborhood group as well that we will let them know if we were going to be planning any classification changes.
Just one more thing, if I may. Yeah, so that's great. I'd like to extend appreciation for South Farnham Road. I think the last time we met, we talked about the weather event we had that November that caused a bunch of frost heaves, and then along came the logging trucks, and because there was some active logging, and beat it up, and then the snow plows cleaned up the mess. So it was a real surprise that you guys had I can't remember what did you have here for farm? Yeah, $582,000 worth of paving. So deepest gratitude from Area C residents, because if you don't go Farnham Road, all roads lead to Courtney. Go figure.
And if I could, I'm happy to speak for a second on the frequency of meetings. And to the question raised, yeah, we've typically met on a biannual basis with elected officials. Like, we come to the board as we are today. And so we're happy to sort of reinstate that twice a year meeting with elected officials. And then if there's a need to meet at the staff level as well. So we're happy to do that if there's the desire to do that.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hey, I got a couple of comments as well. First and foremost, thanks for the presentation. I agree with Directors Arbor and Grease in regards to more meetings with the province and with Main Road here moving forward. I know each of us has a number of comments and thoughts, and we get queried a lot by our constituents. One of the comments or concerns that I've heard a lot from friends out on Hugh Band Road is the need for a traffic light going from getting off the Hugh Band Road and getting onto the North Island Highway. There's a school up there, and quite often there's a lot of folks that are pulling out in the morning, dropping their kids off at school, and then trying to get into town, and then vice versa afterwards after school. And it's a crapshoot. Quite often you have traffic lined up Hugh Band Road for hundreds of meters trying to get back onto the Island Highway to head back into town. So Mike, Kellen, if there's any means of getting some type of a traffic light out there that ensures the safety of everyone moving forward here, we'd sure love to see something happen there with that one. Other concerns that I've heard it from is snow removal. Back in November, I don't know how many phone calls, how many emails we received, and plus CVRD staff. Yeah, there were a lot of upset people, especially out at Bates Beach. We had some old timers out there that couldn't get into town for about 5 days. They had doctor's appointments and they could not get out of Bates Beach to get on a road to get into town. Another big concern is again with regards to Hawkins Road. And if you're heading towards HMCS Quadra and you're going down that long hill that goes down towards the water, quite often that road doesn't see the light of day or does not see a main road truck go down that thing and salt it. Big concerns with regards to on an icy day, there's no road barrier at the bottom of that hill. So quite often there's a lot of folks that are concerned that they're trying to get to HMCS Quadra for work. And, you know, are they going to make it at the end of that hairpin or are they going to go into the water? So if we could see some type of a road barrier at the bottom of that hill, that'd be greatly appreciated. I've also heard from a lot of folks at HMCS Quadra as well, is based upon CFB Comox having that one particular barracks run into some gas problems there a couple of years ago, that HMCS Quadra now is a barracks, a replacement barracks for the one that went down at CFB Comox. So again, with regards to essential service, seeing that road plowed and salted on a regular basis, I think is really, really important moving forward. We'd like to see something taken care of there. And while you're at it, that hill at the bottom of Lazo Road coming onto Torrance, I live in and around that area, and it's crazy how many people end up in the trees there at the bottom of Lazo Road Hill because of no sanding or plowing the snow. What else did I have here? Oh, also, I know with regards to the sewer project that's going to be taking place here in the not too distant future, I know the CBRD has done well with regards to communications and has worked with Mike and others in regards to trying to figure out how we're going to deal with traffic control issues moving forward. I know as a councillor with the Comox First Nation, one of the things that we put forward to the CBRD is some type of traffic control on the back road. We know that, you know, there's a push to make sure that traffic isn't too crazy on the back road, but also speed. We know that people are going to be very impatient because of no use of the Dyke Road. And of course, everybody's going to be bombing along the back road now. So concerns with regards to speed on the back road, especially through Comox First Nation, we'd like to see something dealt with there, whether it's speed bumps or whatever, but just making sure that that road continues to be safe moving forward. Other concerns and issues were with regards to Indians Way. And again, a lot of folks have expressed concerns to me about the safety of that road. Quite often, people are zooming down that road at about 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. We have young kids trying to walk on the side of the road and folks trying to ride bicycles at the same time. And again, we'd just like to see something done a little bit better on Indians Road moving forward. I also had one more issue with regards to Wireless Road and the amount of dust. I guess the road maybe gets sprayed once a year. I think sometimes at the start of the season, but there's a number of homes on Wireless Road where they have to close their windows in the summertime because of the dust. So whether we can do something with regards to spraying the road a little bit more regularly or paving the road, would be nice to see what some of the options are there to help folks moving forward there. I think I'll leave it at that. But I would like to see us meeting on a quarterly basis, perhaps for the next year or two, with Main Road and Modi. Thanks.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I could speak to two of the issues there. The snow removal and the dust control. I'll leave the rest for the ministry folks. But as far as snow removal, so every event is different, and we definitely saw a lot of public complaints in that end of November, early December event, and that one was in particularly difficult for us. All our fleet are activated as soon as it snows, be it a skiff or a heavy snowfall, and the response times we get to some of the side roads is completely dependent on the higher classification roads. So we are focused during the event on the A's and B's roads. So we're on Highway 19, 19A, Comox Valley Parkway, Ham Road, these kind of roads, just cycling those roads while it's snowing, trying to keep the snow to a manageable level. Once the snow stops and we're confident that those roads are good, then we start breaking off and we do the school bus routes. And then once the school bus routes are well taken care of, then we start on those side roads. So the problem that we can run into is when we have, which we did at the end of November, we get everything in ship shape on the higher class roads, we go to start on the lower class roads, and the system moves back in again. And so now we have to go back to those higher class roads. So those side roads didn't get plowed, not because we didn't mean to, but because it started snowing again and we had to focus on Highway 19. And that priority system's specifically linked right to public safety. I mean, obviously, the speed limit's much higher. There's much more consequence of poor conditions on the higher speed limit roads and also the school bus routes. So each event is completely different in the way that how fast we get to some of those smaller side roads. And it's so if, for example, we got lauded at just before Christmas how well we did, and not so much the event prior to that, and it was mostly just because of the conditions. We were able to get on top of things faster than we were the other event. We didn't have to keep going back. The dust control issue, it's interesting. We're seeing climate change is really doing a number on gravel roads. The product we put out requires moisture to activate. So even this last summer, as soon as we started having dew in the mornings, the dust dissipated. But through August, the dust control is present on the road, but we have no moisture in the air. We have no dew in the mornings. There's not rain every 5 or 6 days. So there's no activation of the product. So even if we did put out more product, it would still be dusty because there's no moisture to hold that into the road. That's just how the product works. So it's definitely a challenge for us in the really dry summers that we've been having, the dusty roads. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Director Harbour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in closing, I think, and it's nice that the other two directors see the value in that. And I think what I'd like to assign staff with is just to work with you to just look at our collaboration framework, if we can call it that. Because what I see is in my last 4 years is we get a lot of input from residents, and I'd be happy to hear from between main roads in the province in the MOTI, what would be, and on our side, what would be the most appropriate to distribute information. So for example, all the emails or the phone calls, is it better if we just don't even answer and forward it to you? Or would it be helpful if we had an internal list of priorities that we worked on at the CVRD and then we brought to you every 3 months? You know, I'm just seeing that there's no standard in how we collaborate and how we pass on information between elected officials and residents and the province and main roads. And perhaps you have the answer, perhaps staff has better insight into that as well, but that's what I'd like to see come back, so that it's clearer that when I talk to residents, I say, you know, don't even bother with me. We meet twice a year and just email them right away. Or is it useful if we recognize that the local government is seen as kind of a conduit for those comments? And then maybe we can better organize those comments for you moving forward. So that's kind of the thoughts I have in terms of collaboration. And then, of course, the strategic projects, active transportation and all that. How do we go on collaborating around that? So it could be maybe just to formalize a little bit how we work together. Would be my thought for this morning. I don't know if that's supported, and if you have positive feedback, I can make a motion later at the end of our agenda for staff to pursue that with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that a little bit. As I mentioned before, historically we've always met twice a year with all the directors in a forum like this, and that's always been very helpful. And we've always kind of done it, typically either the late winter, the early spring, and then sort of closer to the end of summer or the fall. And that's really to align with sort of accomplishments like you've seen today, and then also planning for the next year. So talking about really those projects. In between these meetings, I think it is really important, and we've had a lot of success with other regional districts, meeting with staff at the staff level more regularly, because we're all working on planning projects and studies and that sort of thing. And so for us to be able to meet with your staff on a regular basis is really helpful. It also helps inform yourselves as well, and on the things that we're talking about, maybe the smaller things, the day-to-day things. So, to go along to formalize those meetings, we've always had a memorandum of understanding, and that really it's just to say what I've just said. It just says we agree to meet this many times a year and work collaboratively on projects and priorities.
Thanks, Kellen.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add that the communication that the regional district staff give to members of the public is to be calling those 1-800 numbers for Main Road. And can I confirm that that is the appropriate communication that we give? Because that is the way that you become aware of activities and actions. You get it directly from the people that report on. And is that working effectively?
Correct. Yes. Please continue with that. Main Road is our first point of contact for all maintenance related issues. And then if Main Road's if it's unrelated specifically to maintenance, then again, use our 1-800 number for Drive UC, or you can reach out to our local office. In other words, just looking quite well.
Just
Thanks,
to
Kellen.
here as well, we do have so it's quarterly staffing meetings we have set up right now with the regional district. So that's primarily myself and our development services group, and routinely with the planning and development service groups as well at the regional district. So that's happening now, and happy to let's say have any additional meetings as as the group sort of feels is appropriate there.
Thanks. Edmund, did you have anything else to add?
I'm just going to be a little tongue in cheeky. The best thing you can do for me is don't plow my road. That way, when they phone me, I say, yeah, me neither.
Thanks, Edmund. All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot for your time. I guess before you move on, we do need to make a motion to receive the report from Modi.
Second.
Thank you. And also a vote on receipt. Thanks, gentlemen. All carried. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Take care.
Bye now.
Next delegation.
We'll receive the landlord road delegation. Second.
Carried. Thanks. We'll welcome Zach up to the podium. Just hit the red button there, Zach.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Chair Namu, please. Nice to see you there.
Thanks. Just a reminder, Zach, you got about 10 minutes for your
Yes.
presentation, and then we'll have open the floor up for comments and questions. Thanks.
Perfect. So it's very important to me, first off, to acknowledge the staff here at the regional district. They do a tremendous job. This presentation is in no way critical of their work to date. I really appreciate them, and especially Doug's sweater today. I just wanted to discuss some of the overlaying issues that we're having with a subdivision that Jim and Tia have started. It's a 514 of the Local Government Act, so it's a subdivision for a relative. We recently went through the rezoning process. We're now in the process of subdividing the property. And coming up against several conflicts of regulation, mostly around Seal Bay Park. Seal Bay Park, as you know, is a hub of the Comox Valley, and even noted as a significant ecological, I believe, patch that serves as a link of conservation corridor and helps protect the safe passage of wildlife and helps preserve regional biodiversity. It is a jewel of the Comox Valley, and the conflict, we've also invested a tremendous amount of money into Seal Bay Park in trail infrastructure, parking lots, and I don't know the exact figure, but it's a lot. And it's also treated as farmland. It's zoned as ALR. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this flicker. There we go. It's zoned as ALR, Agricultural Land Reserve. And as you can see in the yellow mustard brown color there, that is the ALR zoned area. And 5254 Langlaw is noted by the green mark there where Jim and Tia are subdividing their property. I'm here to just bring forward the idea that the ALR land in question is not active farmland. However, it is being treated as active farmland in the subdivision process. And this is perhaps to protect it to become active farmland in 2040 when the lease expires. And so I'm wondering if it will be deforested and become active at any point. I think it's highly unlikely. This is what I hear from everybody. Everyone's saying, well, that's crazy. Like that would never happen. This is nuts. And so I'm here to kind of hopefully we can all work together to make this make sense and also help with some of the requirements that are costing a lot of money. When we embarked on this process, we kind of had budgeted $20,000 to $30,000 for the whole process, and that's fine. However, now we are finding that we're required to appease ALR requirements based on the edge planning guide by the province to plant 240 10-foot staked trees in a 15-meter vegetation buffer, which is the cheapest way to create a vegetation buffer up against the trees of the park. And we also are required, based on my professional agrologist recommendation, a 6-foot chain link or solid wood panel fence. We've received quotes from multiple vendors. We can't even find 10-foot trees, and it's gratuitous. We found 50. We'd be budgeting something between $50,000 and $100,000 for that, and I don't think it's necessary. Here's some of the plans that we have showing on the east side here, showing the 15-meter buffer, showing the 30-meter offset that is required by the ALR for building. And when we did our rezoning, when we applied for rezoning, we showed an optimal building site on the property and a proposed septic site, which were approved. Those are the two approved septic sites, but they fall within the vegetation buffer. And so you can't plant trees on top of a septic system, unfortunately. So we have a bit of a conflict there. Although this is just a subdivision at this point, we also don't have house plans. And so we can't really fulfill the whole application because of we don't have house plans. We're just working on subdivision at this point. So I'm just trying to forward this.
If you point down
Okay.
towards this spot here,
Okay,
normally
thank you.
folks have a little better luck.
So this is, I just grabbed a few points from my professional agrologist, talking in reference to the ethical dilemma. And his big concern primarily here, just to sum this up, is fire. Planting more trees against trees creates basically ladder fuels against Seal Bay Park. And I made some calls to Parksville, to the Coastal Fire Center, and they sent me this report that was created in part with the Comox Valley Regional District. Indeed, talking about the conflicts of creating a vegetation buffer against, and that should be avoided at all costs, to be fire smart, and that makes sense to me. I went into the OCP as well. It had similar language in regards to fire prevention. So it's definitely in conflict with the ALR. And again, we have to ask these questions. Is it ALR or is it park? We've invested significant money to get people in the park. Everything with the ALR has to do with keeping people out of the park. And so they even use language such as don't trespass into ALR property. Keep this clear in case we have tractors driving by. We're worried about flying rocks. And later down the road, this will impact the building process as well. So basically, I would like to put forward the consideration to permit a variance of building that is not so strict, to provide optimal building and have the septic put where it was zoned to be. Eliminate the requirement for this 15-meter vegetation buffer, at very least, to the building permit stage. And not have a new fence requirement. There's an existing fence already on the property, and it's good enough for horses or sheep, or we had several animals in there at one time. And I'd also like to talk about, sorry, this forwarded too far. Here we go. To accept a farmland protection report without these requirements. So that is a provincial requirement. However, I'd like to, really talk about some of these overlaying costs, that we don't have to do anything in order to make this the safest choice possible for the Comox Valley. So in the future, because this is a general presentation, I'd also like to highlight that building plans, I've been told, it would be favorable to build your house in a way that is favorable to the ALR as well. And that might include smaller windows or no windows facing the park in case a rock flew up and smashed the back of your house, or some hypothetical dust blew over and got in your eyes or whatever. It sounds kind of bonkers. So ultimately, I'd just like to close by saying, this whole project started with me just wanting to take care of my parents as they age in place on their property. It's become a huge financial burden, especially with these added costs. And I don't think it's necessary costs. And so I just thank everybody for your attention, and hope we can solve this for the Comox Valley, because I don't see this happen. I don't see this problem going away. And I also am very concerned as a citizen about the future of Seal Bay Park and the fact that in 2040, it could be logged. And it has, within the ALR jurisdiction, it can be logged. And with 100-year-old trees there, we have emerging old growth trees. It's a tasty proposition for the government. And so I'd just like to close on that. what are we going to do to protect Seal Bay Park and take it out of the ALR? Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Director Harbour?
Thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see you again. I thought that was the last we were going to see of you when we approved the preceding number of months a year ago. But here we are, and reading your or listening to your presentation and the materials before it, it did remind me of the 12 Tasks of Asterix, the movie, when I was young, where one of the tasks is actually to go through the Roman bureaucracy and not go crazy. And so it's a little bit of that when you see things either at cross purpose or with multiple jurisdiction involved, as you've had to deal with and continue to have to deal with. Most of the time, I'd say that it goes pretty well, but this is an interesting case. I think you've stumbled into something I was not aware that that actually a big chunk of Seal Bay Park was ALR. So that's something I learned today. And as in your comments regarding to taking it out of ALR, not easy. And second, if we see a global food systems collapse in the next 20 years, maybe we will want to farm where 92% of our food still comes off of Vancouver Island. So you never know. I think there's a reason why the province is protecting ALR, even though clearly this is a park right now. It could become a tribal park in the future. It's hard to foresee the future, to understand where things are going to head. But I mean, to me, like there's, as you say, like it's just frustrating because there's a number of practical things that don't seem to be allowed under the rules and regulation. Because, for example, I could say, well, maybe these kick into gear only if this became an active farm. The building is a little more difficult because it's a permanent thing, but in regards to the vegetation buffer and the fence, it just, that seems like the 12 works of Asterix a little bit, right, at current status. So it could be a requirement that we ask that this only kicks into gear if this became a farm. In regards to the buildings, I would be fine in considering that. So I'll let the other director speak, but it's just a matter for us. We'll need some staff information around what the options are, whether elected officials can influence that process. But I think a staff report would really help us understand our options in support of what you're trying to achieve. And yeah, it's just, and I think you're right. If it's true for your property, it's probably true for another number of properties. So we should look at that and make sure that, as you pointed out, our internal regulations align in regards to land use planning, but also fire protection and all these things. So thank you, Chair.
Director Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Zach. So the way I figure it, by 2040, you'll be the one aging in place.
I might not be here at this point. Yeah. I got a lot more gray hair over the last 3 years. So.
Yeah, I know when we came up with this policy at the OCP, we realized quite earlier on that it was unenforceable because of the existing lots we had already, that it couldn't be done. So I think there's probably some leeway there in variances on our behalf. We do need a report on this. It sounds excessive, but like all government policies, you'll find that there's very little correlation between the feds and the province and even the provincial ministries, let alone the province in general. So it's a bit of a labyrinth to work your way through, I have to admit. There's no easy way around it, but I do think that we have an agriculture advisory a planning commission that looks at these things, and I think they're just getting up and running now. Okay. So I do think that and then you throw in the ALR as well, because it's another unconnected authority. So it becomes very onerous and very complicated. So yeah, we're gonna have to see what we can do to unpick this thing and make it so it actually makes logical sense. But I learned a long time ago that government and logic are two different It's like justice and the court system, right? They're two different things. Anyway, thanks for coming forward, and we'll see what we can do.
If I might respond to that as well, I do realize it's, you know, the ALR, I'm not attacking the ALR. I think it's a really good thing. When I called the Agricultural Land Commission, their phone recording actually says, we'll get back to you in 7 to 10 business days. And so I realized suddenly, you know, local government is on the ground, and we are, what is the difference of clearing this mud and all these stakeholders. And it's clear that other departments or higher tiers of government are pretty not only removed, but not open to talking about much. So I really, you know, this is the problem with me coming in here every second day or whatever to talk to staff, and they're left with different avenues. And those avenues are, we'll just throw $100,000 at it and then it's done. Well, that's ridiculous, right? And that's just kind of what I want to highlight, is that you can solve everything with money, but it doesn't make sense at all. And in fact, it makes things worse because it affirms this is the right way to do it. And it puts us at a higher fire risk, and it keeps people out of the park, and it restricts wildlife from just coming in. It's okay to have deer in your yard. You know, we don't need a big fence. So those are just, yeah, I could go on and on, but thank you very much for your comments. Yes, they do. Yes. You need something for the kids to chase.
Thanks for your presentation, Zach. And I understand that you are meeting up with staff tomorrow. You have a meeting with staff tomorrow, CVRD staff tomorrow?
Nothing formal that I know of, but I'm happy to meet with staff.
Don, if you could just comment, please.
Good morning through the CEO to the chair and the directors. Yeah, just to follow up on that, director, we have scheduled a meeting with Zach Wade and his parents tomorrow to discuss how we can move forward with this application. We have sent them some information in regards to some reference to some development permits that was approved by the board, give them some examples on how we can find a solution and a way to get their development permit to proceed so they can continue with their subdivision application. So in the meantime, we will be working with the Whites to resolve this and to try to answer any of their questions or concerns that they have today, and how we can move forward.
And Mr. Chair, one other thing, so staff will work with the Whites to try and rectify their application and what their requirements are. The Whites have presented some very good information here with respect to questions about the development permit. We are undertaking a farm planning process and have a committee appointed to guide us on that. What I would like to suggest is we will refer the White's presentation to that committee to reflect on the development permit process and to see whether they have some recommendations of variations with respect to the circumstances that have been presented here.
Thanks. And just my final comment in regards to the mention of windows and how you should have smaller windows or have no windows at all due to the potential of a rock being shot through your window. I would think that if it's your property in your house and you're doing the farming activity and you're shooting a rock into your window, well, you pays your money and you takes your chances. So I'm not quite sure why we would have things such as that in the policy, but that's just my final comment with regards to that. So thanks again for your presentation, and hopefully we hear good things moving forward here. Moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. And thank you, staff.
So we'll vote on receipt of the report. Oh.
So I just want to be crystal clear about action. We have staff meeting with the applicants, but and a referral to the Ag APC, but is that something that we'll come back to this committee for an update, perhaps.
By all means, if you wish to propose that as a resolution under new business.
Yes,
then it's accountable.
I think I'll do that because they're in a long process and I don't want to make it lengthier. And I think if it comes back here in the next month or two, that would be wonderful.
Yep. So the committee can consider that under new business, Chair. Yeah.
Thanks. So vote on receipt of the report. Oh, carried. Thank you.
I'll move the management report. Second or receipt.
And Mr. Chair, if the committee members have any questions with respect to the management report, staff will address those now.
So vote on receipt of report then. All carried. Thank you. Moving into D.
Receipt.
Second.
Thank you, carried.
Thank you very much. And just a verbal report to indicate that we have received no specific information at this time regarding the financial plan and the services that the EASC manages. There is still the opportunity for the public to provide input, and our website has full background information with respect to the budget process and the services provided. So we really encourage the public to provide input that will be shared with you, but nothing at this time.
So vote on receipt. Thanks, carried. Moving into E.
Receipt.
Second.
Carried.
Thank you, Chair and Directors, and Brian Chow from the Planning Department is here to present this report and answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Through the CEO to the chair and committee members. Today we have a Union Bay Tourism Development Permits application in front of you. The owners of the subject property at 347 and 349 Russell Street are proposing to develop this 0.27 hectare residential lot with a new single detached dwelling and accessory building being a garage and a workshop. The objective of the Union Bay Tourism Highway Development Permit area is to encourage the development of a seaside pedestrian-oriented development along the historic main street of Union Bay. The guidelines call for buildings to incorporate architectural details at a pedestrian scale, such as having buildings of maximum of 2 stories, and to employ different facade treatments with specific colors and building materials. Roof lines should be oriented in the east-west direction to reflect the historic settlement pattern and to protect view corridors to Bain Sound. The proposed development, being a single detached dwelling, aims to replicate the design of the existing building built in 1901. The facades of both proposed buildings will feature white fiber cement siding, which acts as canvases for the applicant's artwork. The sample artwork are in Appendix A for reference. Overall, the proposed buildings are designed at a pedestrian scale and are oriented to protect view corridors to Bain Sound. As the proposed buildings are consistent with the development permit area guidelines for pedestrian scale seaside development along the main street of Union Bay, the issuance of the DP is recommended. As part of the separate overall development permit area review project, staff will assess exemption options within this DPA for development that only comprises of single detached residential development, as there are 20 of the 30 parcels that within this DPA have residential zoning that enables single detached dwelling construction. Mr. Chair. Oh, and one more thing. The agent, Daniel Bruce, is in attendance, as well as the owners of the property, Tom and Bessie. They're on Zoom and they're available to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Any comments or questions from directors? Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That looks good to me. And it's nice to see reinvestment in that area. It's historical Union Bay. And so I'll have absolutely no problem approving this. But on the larger picture, I think even if this moves forward and approves, this is the kind of topic I would like to bring to the APC in the future is, for example, the Union Bay Highway tourism, like for people to understand the opportunities, what currently exists, what is currently planned. A lot of the commercial development is going to be across the street from that property. And it may be worth thinking about or having discussions or exploring for all these lots that are on the frontage in the long term, what could be other opportunities, whether we would want to see, whether we want to keep that policy or whether we wanted to see even more permissible development. And I realize that right now in the active transportation, we're looking at Royston School, but in our active transportation plan, it's nice to see that this is a place where those two marry, where it talks a lot about the pedestrian and all the rest of it. The pedestrian is not great, especially between that property and the community hall. And that's definitely on my list if we get Royston down to see if we can collaborate with Modi to improve the walkability along that section. A lot of kids and a lot of families kind of walk to the hall. So that seems consistent with the policy. But I just think it'd be great to engage the APC and others in those kinds of topics, just to review the existing policy. But for today, I'm quite happy to get this one passed.
Director Grave, you good? Okay. So I guess we just need to vote on receipt. All carried.
Move recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Carried. Vote on recommendation. All carried. All right. And number 2.
Move receipt.
Second.
All carried.
Thank you very much, directors. And Lisa Kilpatrick is here to provide an update with respect to the agricultural plan.
Lisa.
Through the chair to the directors, thank you for having us here today to provide an update for you on the Comox Valley Agricultural Plan, or I'll call it the CVAP. I just want to recognize that we have Jody McLean here, our senior planner who has been working on this file since the beginning. Nikki Whitaker, the CVRD Agricultural Coordinator, unfortunately is not able to be here today. And then also in the gallery, we have members from our advisory committee, John Birch, Sarah Keller, and Brad Chappell. And I would just like to note that the advisory committee that we have is very engaged and a great resource for the staff and consultants to be connecting with. So the work on the ag plan began in 2022 with funding that was received for phase 1, which culminated in the draft interim report that you have in front of you. The funding was received from the Investment Agriculture Foundation, from the BC Local Government Partnership Program. So the goal of the plan update, has been to produce a comprehensive agricultural planning document that focuses on the CVRD's jurisdiction and provides guidance in identifying opportunities to strengthen the regional agricultural sector and contribute to its long-term sustainability. Here we go again. This happened to me last time. Where do I point it? Down here? Over there. Okay, there we go. All right, so just a little chart here on the planning process. So right now we are focusing on engagement with stakeholders prior to moving forward to the development of a final plan. So over 2022 and to date, the existing CVAP from 2002 has been reviewed and evaluated. The background report, which you have seen before and is part of the staff report, was created to give context for the update. So really looking at where we are at today in agriculture in the Comox Valley and highlighting some considerations for future. We also had input from Comox First Nation into the background report. The advisory committee was established. We have 11 members that sit on that committee, and we have been meeting fairly regularly in the last couple of months, and intend to continue to engage the committee as we move forward. The consultants have consulted with have conducted over 30 one-on-one interviews with key folks, mainly farmers, and they have completed the phase 1 interim report draft. So before I move forward, I just want to identify that what was to happen at this point was that we were going to be going out with surveys to farmers and to the community, and then that was going to culminate in a town hall and looking at the completion of a draft plan, probably early fall. What we heard, however, was that we needed to have more transparency and accessibility into the process. We needed to ensure that we were hearing the voice of farmers and folks that intersect with the agricultural community in the Comox Valley, to ensure that we were going to have a plan that resulted in buy-in and people feeling that it reflected the needs of the agriculture sector now and into the future. So what we have done is we have recognized that the interim report is a very effective tool for going out to the community to make sure that our assessment of the past plan is accurate, and that we are looking to address the issues that are meaningful to people moving forward in the future. So as we move into our phase 2 engagement plan, the goals of the engagement are to increase understanding of what an agricultural plan is and its purpose, whom it serves, and the roles of CVRD and the agencies and other agencies in implementing the actions that come out of the plan. The goal is to provide meaningful opportunity for input to ensure the plan is updated and reflects the voice, needs, and context of the CV ag sector. We also want to make sure that we are providing time for Comox First Nation to consider how they would like to be engaged. So we will be bringing this forward to new Chief and Council and providing time for that engagement. So the objectives of our phase 2 engagement process is to engage a diverse range of agricultural players in terms of demographics and commodity groups, to present the draft interim report to these groups to validate and learn more about stakeholder perspectives, to identify existing assets, gaps, challenges, and opportunities for the updated CVAP, to allow for deeper discussion into key theme areas in order to set direction for the plan, and then to develop the final interim report. Move forward. So the activities as we move forward will be to ensure that Comox First Nations engaged, and we reach out to the new, as I mentioned, to the new Chief and Council. We'll be conducting a series of 2-hour workshops. The workshops, there will be 3 workshops, one each with the local farmers institutes and with the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association. And then we are looking at an approach where we bring themed workshops to the stakeholders. Draft topics right now is to look at water and agriculture, economic development and agriculture, long-term community planning and agriculture, and then climate change or extreme weather event impacts, emergency planning, and agriculture. We'll also be looking to host an online workshop And the purpose of this will be to engage individuals or representatives from organizations that have an interest in or intersect with the Comox Valley ag sector. We'll also continue opportunities for folks to engage through contact with staff, as well as there's always an opportunity to provide written submission at any point in the process. We have just updated our website with some frequently asked questions, and we'll be ensuring that our website continues to be updated as we move along the process. So the timeline that we're at now is that through the end of March and early May, we'll be conducting the workshops. So approximately 8 workshops will be happening. And then through June, we'll be meeting with our staff, and the advisory committee will be reviewing and contemplating the consultant's final draft of, sorry, that should say phase 1 report, not phase 2 report. And then, of course, we'll be bringing the presentation of the final interim report, phase 1 report, to this committee with recommendations for the next steps in the development of the ag plan. And so we'll just move to questions.
Thanks for the presentation, Lisa. Anyone?
Thank you. I went through the dusty archives, and I've got farm reports from 2003, 2009, the OCP agricultural aquaculture overview that we used with engaging both those stakeholders, and so forth and so on. And it seems to me that just going through the stuff in a cursory way, April 24, that most of the same questions arise, that nothing's really changed. So everybody pays lip service to agriculture, but they become a pain in the arse when you're trying to ride your electric bike down Headquarters Road and there's a hay baler in front of you. I'm glad this is staying with the electoral area services, because I really don't think our municipal friends have a flipping clue, obviously. But my question is around the engagement piece, and I'm really happy we're not shoving this through. My understanding, first of all, is we only have 30K left, and that's going to come out of our strategic planning. Is that correct?
Lana, I think, is best positioned to answer that question, Director Reed.
Through Chair Hardy, should the directors. So we proposed $30,000 for this plan in the electoral area planning function in 2023.
Planning for electoral area strategic planning.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 30K. We've already blown through the grant. And you're talking about 8 workshops. Are we taking this to the people? Or are we still having workshops at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or something like that? Because what I heard is that people would like to be able to weigh in a casual way on their own time after work, and possibly in the community halls that we have.
So there we go. Yeah, that's a great comment. And so one of the principles that we're bringing forward with this engagement process is accessibility. So ensuring that when we go out to the public, it's at an accessible time, then that we are also providing the other mechanisms. So that's contact through staff, being able to provide the written submission. So we want to respond, and we want to be available to hear from the public.
Well, my question was, are we having it here, or are we taking it out to the people?
Oh, in physical space. So the intent is that we'll be taking it out.
Okay, that's heartening at least. Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, for resource material, did you guys have access to all this stuff? Or is it now in the cloud somewhere?
So is that the 2030? I'm not sure exactly what material that you're looking at there, Director Green.
Well, I got Innovate 2030. And I can't, I've got what I've got, but I don't know if that's ever been published, whether it's in the public eye or not. I don't get a straight answer on that. So, that's one thing I think was very helpful. And unfortunately, some municipal people didn't attend and didn't get it. But, there's a lot of other Gary Ralston's reports, all that stuff. I wonder if any of that's been considered.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know specifically the documents you got there, but we have several boxes worth of similar publications that came out of the agricultural plan in our archives. And in the evaluation phase of this new ag plan, that's the kind of stuff we went over. That evaluation phase was a lot about looking at that old ag plan, the recommendations it had, and what was done with those in that time frame, the last 20 years. And evaluating and updating how we responded to it and what
I saw that. Just that was strictly on the 2002 plan.
Yeah.
But the other supporting documents, I'm just wondering if it's been available to the group.
Oh, to the group, not to the advisory committee. The evaluation was mostly internal work with the appropriate departments and determining how things evolved over those years.
What about the sustainability strategy and all the, I guess you took a look at that because that was actually received by this board. So the submission they had for agriculture to the sustainability strategy. I thought that was a good one.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just confirm that staff will create a list of the documents referenced, including Innovate 2030, ensure that their committee is aware of those documents so that they can access any of them if for any of their own personal research. And that will be a record of the project so that you can be informed of what was referenced or available.
Okay, so I won't continue, but you're saying that we will be able to actually access the 2030 report?
Yeah, Innovate 2030 was something done by CVEDS. Formerly, it had some good recommendations with respect to agriculture. We will take those portions of the report that are relevant to this and make it available for sure.
Thank you.
And just adding on to that, the 2030 report was shared with the consultants.
Yeah. I just got my own.
Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. I found, and I'll probably still go over it. This was a weekend packed with readings for all the different things. So I haven't gone as much in depth as I want with this report. But the reason why I'm interested is it's actually not a bad piece of work in terms of especially the evaluation of the 2002 recommendations. And I think it takes an honest look as to what or how CVRD can and cannot impact some of the areas. I think it says that from 2002, about just 1/3 of tasks or strategies or actions that were recommended at the time were completed, which leaves 2/3 that are not, or sometimes the world just goes in a different directions, for example, with the Oyster River farm and things like that. So I also like some of the new framework and what the advisory and the staff is starting to tease out for the go forward. I think if we're going to be a little more serious and focused on ag, no matter the length of time that the plan will be, we say that it's a 20-year horizon. We should almost force ourselves into a 5-year touch base or a way to really monitor the actions. And in the table, what was lacking in the appendix, it had the different things, right? Completed, not completed, But I think responsibility would be important as another column to add. So that on the CVRD part, you can see, CVRD, this one belongs with the ALR, the province. So that's really clear so that by the time we possibly approve the plan, we can really tease out, hey, at the CVRD, these are the 12 things that we're responsible for that we need to ensure that in 5 years or so. Basically put some clearer goal posts, because I think the failure of the 2002 plan is it was written and then really it was just like left to the wind a little bit, right? Nobody was responsible for it. There were general statements. So, and for this committee, I think it's still going to be an eye. This was raised by the other director as to whether when you've identified a task that the CVRD is responsible for, whether we will want to create a service for that or whether this will continue to live generally under planning in the RGS. Because the term is quick, 4 years, and if we want to establish a service around that to better support. So for example, we had the presentation from the young agrarians and we're all getting excited about it, but we need to know if this is going to be a big responsibility for the CVRD or whether, you know, the province will lead or where it's going to sit. So that's my feedback for today. A good interim report, and it's nice to hear the level of engagement. And I would say, yeah, keep digging and extending the reach as much as possible. We know it's always busy. That's what we hear from farmers. But yeah, before you come back with a final report, it'd be nice to see more engagement. My only regret, I guess, is yeah, we didn't include aquaculture, and I was one who said let's not include it at the time, but I'm starting to regret it because there might be some good things coming out of it if we keep plugging away at it. Thanks.
Director Reid?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I argued for aquaculture, but they said, oh, this is strictly an agricultural focus. Well, it's a wet version of agriculture. I had the great privilege of going to the Merville Hall this weekend to the Farm Connect meeting. It was put on by the Mid-Island Farmers Institute. Spoke with a lot of farmers there, including a former director for Area B. I had a good conversation and got a lot of information out of that. But, you know, it seems like a lot of it is, again, multi-jurisdictional. We're dealing with the ministry, we're dealing with the federal government, and they seem intent on making farming itself, you know, unsustainable, unaffordable. Every time you turn around, it's like you need a $30,000 building for your compost or whatever. So you know, it's going to be a challenge. I hope the public doesn't expect miracles. It's not going to happen. But I think it's very important that we hear from all the people, like in a roundtable scenario where they don't feel like they're being steered in an appropriate conclusion. The other thing was, oh yeah, the Chamber of Commerce recently had a State of the Island economic report that was given by Myers Norris Penny. And it shows that farming is going in absolutely the wrong direction. In the Comox Valley alone, we've gone from 211 farms raising generally animal farms down to 163, crop farms from 205 down to 188. And that trend continues all the way up and down the island. So if we're looking for food security and being able to actually grow more of our own food on the island, you know, we're a long way from that. Again, everybody pays lip service to it, but it'd be nice to be able to come out of this with some very pointed, concrete direction that we can at least try to work with the senior government to implement. Because I do think that a lot of the roadblocks they run up against are not necessarily local government. So yeah, we got a lot of background material. Some of it was sort of like forbidden from your eyes. The rest of it is buried in the antiquity of time, like Gary Ralston's review on agricultural components and the sustainability study, which actually was incorporated in 2009 into the sustainability strategy, which this board, or a bigger part, the greater board, has never adopted. So yeah, maybe we can get better outcomes.
Thanks for your passion, Director Greaves. Thanks again In regards to the report. A few things that I took away from the report again was the understanding who was being interviewed in this process. I think names being involved in the report would be helpful, so we understand the diversity of the folks that are being interviewed. I think it'd be important. Another big item, I guess, that really stood out to me was the fact that at the end of the day, was it a net profit of just over $5,000 per farm? That's very alarming. And again, from an economic perspective, from a business perspective, all the blood and sweat and tears that you do as a farmer, whether it's in the agriculture industry or raising cattle or producing milk or fields, etc., to see a $5,000 net profit on average for each farm is very concerning. And again, at the end of the day, if you're not doing it for the love, I'm not quite sure what you're doing it for, because you're definitely not doing it for the dollars. So how do we resolve that issue moving forward? I think is a big one for me. I'm glad to hear that there's going to be some more engagement with the Comox First Nation in regards to the planning committee, or even having somebody from KFN on that committee moving forward. I think is really important. I think from what I saw in the report was basically a 3-page or 4-page report from Dr. Jesse Moore in regards to some of the past activities with regards to agriculture. But I think moving forward, I think it's really important for us to understand where Comox is in regards to agriculture down the road. And I mean, we can look back on the past, but I think right now what we're focusing on is what are we doing in the future. There was one more item that I had, or two more actually. And Director Grease had made mention of the fact that there's a $30,000 budget for 2023. Is that correct? And that's to complete 8 workshops and finish a final report. And that's, if I'm understanding that correctly, that's just on phase 1, right? There's a phase 2.
So phase 2 that we're moving into is the engagement process. So the report that you'll receive in June will contain all the feedback that was received through that engagement process, and we'll set the stage for what the final plan is going to look like. And so the $30,000 that we are looking to complete phase 2. And then we will need to identify the next steps for the actual creation of a final ag plan.
So if I could, so is 30 grand that we have budgeted, is that going to be enough to complete the rest of the project moving forward here? Or do you think that there's still going to be more funds required? And if so, how are we dealing about that? And we are chatting about budgets here today. I think we got our friends Kevin here and Lucy. So is this an item that we need to bring up here moving forward? Thanks.
Yes, so we will be looking at what the cost will be to take us to a final report, but also combine that with the consideration of timeline. So if we will need increased funds in 2023, what some possible sources are for those funds. There may be a chance that we will be moving into 2024 on some of these finalized items, which we can contemplate the budget for 2024 as well.
Okay, thanks. And then I got one final comment, again, looking at that report. And I know we've had some comments or some discussions in the Recreation Commission in regards to an agriplex / multiplex. And I didn't see anything in the report, the interim report in regards to where folks in the agriculture sector thought about an agriplex, if that was something that they thought would be beneficial to them moving forward, or if that was just something completely off the radar screen that wasn't even contemplated. Thanks.
Yeah, the agriplex component was contemplated in the review and evaluation phase of the report. That's been an idea that's been around for a while. And it's something that Doug DeMarzo there has been working on more closely with.
So if I can, again, based upon the report that I did see, the interim report, I didn't see anything in there with regards to contemplation of an agriplex. So if I'm understanding correctly from your responses, that it really has been kind of put on, or the onus has been put on the Recreation Commission, and nothing really seriously considered here in this particular process.
Yeah, it's been considered in terms of what the CVRD has been doing in the realm of agriculture. So that is something that in this ag plan we want to provide an overview of how the CVRD is involved in that field, and that is one of the initiatives that is going on within the CVRD. But yeah, it wasn't specifically mentioned in the interim report. You're right.
Yeah, just so again, just one more comment, and then I'll look back to Director Arbor. But again, based upon the report that the interim report that I've looked at, there seems like there's a number of activities that are being considered, whether there's the hub city, or sorry, a food hub, processing, promotion and marketing of local products that are being grown here in the Comox Valley. Again, there seems to be a number of activities there that have been put out there. And again, I'm just kind of wondering if all those activities would benefit having an agriplex in place or not. And I guess that would be a question that I would ask moving forward, is a consideration of that.
I'll say this, Mr. Chair. The plan does not rule it out, but the plan will bring forward the ideas and concepts that can be actioned by the regional district and others. And if those actions require some form of facility or otherwise, that certainly will be part of the recommendations that will come forward. So it doesn't rule it out. It still may be on the table, but we're just not jumping to conclusions without first determining what are all the actions, and then what are the priorities of those actions, and what is within the realm of the regional district.
Thanks for the clarification. Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one more observation based on that discussion. I guess that you're correct. The 2002 plan, when you look at all the activities related to food security, market development, safety and quality, that's probably where you would expect something like that to arise if it was identified, but it was not identified at the time. There's a lot of other activities and recommendations in regards to improving farm viability and growth in the sector, but I didn't see an agriplex in there. And it will be interesting to see if it does arise. I think when you talked about the $5,000 profit per farm, a third of our farms, according to the report, make less than $10,000 a year in their revenues. So I think there would be huge variance in the profitability of farms. And I'm not sure if, I'm sure that the big farms make a lot more than 5,000 profit, hopefully, so maybe that's kind of information that would be good to have as well, is amongst those classes of farms, from the micro farms to the large farms, like, is there concerns about profitability across the board? We're hearing reports that there is, but that would be good to confirm. But yeah, so I think you're right. It'd be good to see once in the final plan if specific initiatives are identified, and what's the role of the CVRD, what that will be. That's what we would hope to achieve, and I'm glad to hear that we may have something by the fall, by the sounds of things, in terms of final report, or would it look to 2024 to complete?
Okay, there we go. So what we'll be coming back with is a final interim report. And Director Hardy, to your comments, if there are gaps in what is stated in the interim report, if people want to see more specific actions that could be contemplated in a plan, that's where that's where you'll see it. So we'll bring those things back to you in a final interim report, which will really give the scope of what a plan is going to address. In terms of a final plan, potentially in the fall, late fall or early next year, depending. We really want to recognize that we need to meet folks where they're at, and this needs to take time. So to put a confirmed end date on it right now sort of defeats the process that we're committing to at this point.
Director B, did you have anything else you wanted to add there? I saw you late on there earlier. Again, I think Director Greaves, you made a comment earlier in regards to a number of different reports that you would like to see available to the APC. And I think, again, I'm not sure if the APC got a chance to see the Agriplex report. I know Director Arbor, as we mentioned, the fact that the primary focus was on the 2002 APC plan or agriculture plan. But again, if that report with regards to Agriplex is included or not, or was included or not, is something that, I'd like to see included with the package as well, if you're including all these other reports that Director Greaves has recommended. Thanks. Any other questions or comments, guys? Thanks a lot for your presentation, Lisa. So I guess now we're going to do a vote on receipt of the report. All carried. Next item.
We'll receive bylaw enforcement.
Thanks.
Second.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors, and Amanda Yasinski will come to the table and provide a summary of this report.
All right. Bylaw enforcement. So do you need to, I think we did receipt already? Great, perfect, thanks.
Good morning through the CAO to the chair. So this report is a snapshot of all bylaw enforcement activities in 2022. It is for information only and includes appendices for each electoral area attached with a breakdown for each area of the bylaw enforcement activities from last year. So a total of 57 bylaw offense notices, or we call them bonds, were issued in 2022. These are under our new ticketing system that allows us to go through the provincial court adjudicator and not through provincial court itself. So through those 57, that resulted in $8,305 collected in fines. The majority of these paid offenses were at the reduced rate offered when paid early. So there's a 2-week window there with a 25% reduction as incentive for paying those offenses. So it's working really well for us. This is a system that's new. Through our previous municipal tickets, we did not have the ability to have that reduced rate. As well, in 2022, staff held our first adjudication hearings on disputed tickets. These hearings required our bylaw coordinator position to book the dates for a provincially appointed coordinator, then arrange the adjudication needs for each participant. And that can be unique to each participant. Our first hearings, we had 2 set one day, and we can offer in person, over the phone, via written submission, and through Zoom. For someone who's wishing to dispute those offenses, that's how they can now present their evidence and speak to their case instead of in person only through provincial court. So for our first adjudication date, we utilized Zoom for all participants, and we received good feedback from everyone, from staff, the adjudicator, and from members of the public who participated. For the ones that aren't paid, provincial court payment hearings are still utilized through staff to collect any unpaid tickets issued, and we've had a 100% success rate to date. Staff continue to process all unpaid tickets through provincial court. This is quite unique for a local government, let alone a regional district. And we have been getting asked more and more from other municipalities on just how we're doing it, what our system in place is. It is a bit of a sticking point for a lot of places to issue tickets and then have people ignore them and then there's really no avenue to collect on those other than directly through collections. So for the legal dumping program through CSWM received 45 reports of dump sites. These were reported from witnesses and members of the public across the Comox Strathcona service area. As well, bylaw staff have worked closely with MODI because there was increased reports in 2022 related to abandoned and derelict recreational vehicles left on pullouts and on the side of the road. These complaints were received as illegal dumping, and staff worked closely with MODI and RCMP on these ones as well. For our legal action, staff continued to work through CVRD's lawyer on all legal action file. In particular, we still have the shipbreaking business operating in Area A, as well as unfortunately continuing as our Santos file that was across Area A and Area C. That was a court order we received in 2021 on multiple properties. Unfortunately, there's still non-compliance issue with the court order that was obtained in 2021. And we have court dates for this coming June to go back on some contempt charges to enforce that order we received. To support community services, bylaw staff increased proactive parks patrols throughout 2022 to improve visibility within all CVRD parks. This was inclusive of parks on Denman and Hornby as well. Concerns noted were unauthorized campers, vehicles parked contrary to signage, and dogs off leash. 9 parks files were opened to specifically deal with complaints and enforcement. These were due to some illegal wood cutting as well as camping overnight in parks. Additionally, with 30 hours spent on parks patrols specific to enforcement files. I've just realized I've skipped over engineering. In 2022, this was our second year providing water enforcement patrols for water. Staff spent a total of 191 hours doing patrols, and there was 84 warning violations issued and 2 tickets for watering contrary to the posted restrictions at the time. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this one. There was a total of 220 files opened in 2022. The largest number of files is pertaining to zoning complaints, so those land use complaints, with 78 files opened in 2022.
Any comments, questions? Great, thanks for the report. So it is vote on receipt of report. Carrie? Thanks very much.
Receipt project watershed. Second.
And Mr. Chair and directors, Jake Martins will come forward and just answer any questions with respect to this report.
Great, and I think after this one, we'll move into lunch, eh? Jake, so.
Thank you, Russell, through the chair. Yes, this is a brief informational report just following up on the previous delegation that had been received by Project Watershed. They had outlined 3 requests, which we've detailed in the staff report, which there's avenues in which support can be provided, both financial and in-kind support. There has been subsequent correspondence with the society just in regards to the deposit of soil at the regional district, but CSWM staff are working with them around that request. And otherwise, I'd be pleased to answer any questions on this report.
Gentlemen?
Just quickly, Mr. Chair, through the chair to staff. Just to be clear, the Couscous site itself is within the boundaries of the city, correct?
Okay,
correct.
Okay, so yeah, obviously then we have a limited. We can waive we can talk about the CSWM waiving their the deposit fees and what have you, because we do that all the time. But I'm not too clear on the topsoil piece. How does that work?
Yeah, through the chair.
So just in first, maybe I could just comment on the location of the site being within the city of Courtenay. We have encouraged them as well to make similar requests to the municipalities, given that we've been clear that there's, as far as financial support, the rural community grant program is suggested as one option, but of course that's only funding from the electoral areas. And sorry, in regards to your second question, which was, sorry, Director Grieve, it was around the topsoil. Thank you. The topsoil piece, they are looking for topsoil to assist with their plantings, which they're looking to do in the spring and the fall. Topsoil is a product that's produced, of course, by the CSWM site through the pilot composting project. And as part of that pilot project, free material is provided to member municipalities on a availability basis. So in this case, they can work with the city of Courtenay and the CSWM staff to access that material.
Director Greaves, you had follow-up?
Thanks. Yeah, just a clarification on legality. Municipalities, do they have control over things like topsoil and gravel extraction that we don't have control over in the electoral areas?
I'm looking to my colleague Alana Mullally on this one. She's indicating no, but maybe I could just invite her to provide any further detail if necessary.
Through Chair Hardy to Director Grieve, the cities don't have any further powers than we do over extraction.
Okay.
The city does have bylaws around the movement of topsoil and subdivision servicing and land alteration. So similar to what we would have the authority to do.
But we don't have that authority to pass a bylaw on gravel or topsoil extraction, do we?
Not on
Yeah,
extraction.
so we'd
that's
be the
correct.
target for that. Thank you.
Director Harbour?
Yeah, thanks. And I would obviously encourage Chris Kusumso in the staff report, encourage them to apply for the Rural Community Grant Program. It doesn't mean that they'll get the money, but I would quite welcome, as with any other nonprofit, an application that we can consider at that time. And I'm just not sure from the other one around the tipping fee waiver. Is this something that an individual director should bring forward to CSWM, or is staff thinking of bringing a report there, or what would be the appropriate next step?
Through the chair, so there is a publicly available tipping fee waiver policy and application form that community groups can fill out. So in this case, we've provided them with that form in which they can then apply for a tipping fee waiver, and then staff consider that, have the authority to consider and grant that should it meet the qualifications.
And that's, sorry, Chair, it's already been provided to Project Watershed, that application?
Correct.
So no further action from us, basically, just in regards to encouraging them to apply.
Yeah, we certainly encourage them to apply for that.
Great, thank you very much.
And just to mention too, there is a process to vet any proposal just to ensure that there's not materials that are otherwise unaccepted at the landfill. There is a process to vet these, so it's not necessarily a guarantee that you just fill out the form and you get it.
Great. Being that there doesn't look like there's any more comments or questions, vote on receipt. All carried. Thanks, and we'll move into lunch. Do we want to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes for lunch?
Yeah, working lunch, we got a huge schedule.
Okay, well, why don't we working lunch? Okay, so let's say 10 minutes to get our foods all loaded up and back at her. All right, and get back at it. So we're looking at item number 5. Thank you. All carried. Ted, you're up.
Thank you. Through the chair. This is a report back on potential funding for a request from the Denman Island Community Education Society to help fund their outdoor structure in the vicinity of the community hall, adjacent to the community hall. It's really seen as an outdoor recreation and cultural space. And the impetus of this thought was during COVID when the groups were looking at how to still engage community, and a lot of outdoor spaces have been built around the community of various different degrees. You've seen some on the school district lands as well as out at Black Creek Community Hall that are being used for similar purposes. So there is a lot of value in these spaces in conjunction with the community halls and nearby community residents who don't have a lot of access to either indoor or outdoor spaces already. So what they have looked at, they've done a lot of fundraising over the last few years, and they're looking at a 342,000 budget, of which 275,000 has been, secured through various other grants and donations. One of the challenges here is one of the major funders of 96,000, Pacific Can, is looking to ensure that their money will be utilized by March 31st, and as such has suggested to the group that a March 3rd deadline to show them that they have secured funding to complete the project is in place. We reviewed a number of items in order to help suggest funding this group. And at this time and presently, the proposal is to secure 17,691 from the Denman and Hornby Islands Community Works Funds, which is a little bit short of their ask of 72,000. There's another option in the report that also looks to a potential tax requisition to help support this. At this time, given the delegation was just a couple of weeks ago, I'll just open it to questions.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Chair. I may have option 3, which would be a bit of a combo of the two. I understand that as you said, with the March 3rd deadline and dealing with other funders and trying to confirm final funding, I know there's quite a bit of support in the community for this. So maybe not the full amount in option 2, but I would say if we can do the Community Works Fund allocation and then a $40,000 contribution through requisition, and then I'll be adjusting potentially a couple of budgets later on in the agenda on Denman to make it less of a hit for Denmanites, but I think to try to complete that project, they're leveraging significant funds, and I'd be happy to, if the board would consider basically option 3, which is support a contribution of 17,691, and instead of 54,000 by way of an increase, just an increase of 40,000. If that's, if fellow directors are amenable. Thank you. Sorry, I thank you. And further, there might be a secondary actually, this may not be a recommendation, but just for director's knowledge, I would like to also send in the next couple of days before March 3rd, if this passes, I would have a follow-up recommendation that I write a letter, or we write a letter confirming to the senior funders that our share of the cost.
Doug, did you have any comments?
No, I have no further comments.
Director agreed?
Yeah, I will support the motion that Director from Area A is proposing, and I think it's important to be able to support each other when it comes to some of these things. Obviously, the director has a closer ear to the ground than I do, so I will trust in his judgment.
So Excuse me, so are we looking at a different, a resolution being put forward here then? And then with regards to the recommendation, are we voting on that or are we not voting on that recommendation? Eric Garber?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so if you look in option 2, I would propose that in option 2, there's an amount identified for 54,000. And I would propose that it be reduced to 40,000. And basically, I would propose that we vote on this positively. So what it is we would put in 17,000 of community works funds, which is some of those federal direct transfer grants we get. And then there would be a requisition that special requisition to the facility service on Denman Island that only Denman Island residents pay for to as our contribution to the project.
So vote on receipt of the report from Doug. Carried.
I will move that the recommendation with a slight adjustment that that it be, sorry, I will move option 2 with a slight adjustment that instead of 54,309, it reads 40,000.
Carried. Vote. Carried. Thanks. So we got that then. Perfect. All right.
That way it was moved as amended.
No, there was no amendment. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so thank you.
Second.
Carrie.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And I'll call on Kevin DeVell to introduce the financial planning budget presentations and where we are at. And he'll lead us on a couple of proposed financial plans here.
Are you ready?
Thank you very much, Russell, through the chair to the directors. Good afternoon. So yes, we have another series of financial planning reports to bring forward to you today. So we have 7 presentations for your consideration today. We will then have 6 going forward to the board tomorrow, plus 1 to our new Regional Parks and Trails Committee. This will be the last of the scheduled budget presentations for this particular committee. So we thank the directors, as always, for your time and effort and feedback on all of the various budget presentations. I will be presenting the first 3 here upcoming, and then we'll be passing them off to the respective staff for their presentation. So the dashboard is just up there quickly just to give you a sense of kind of where we're at the process. So once we get through the next couple of days, we'll have 2 last budgets going forward in early March, and then we'll be spending the next roughly 3 weeks just getting everything rolled up and ready to bring forward as part of our annual budget bylaw for your consideration.
So vote on receipt report. Carrie, thank you.
We'll receive grant and aid services.
Second. Carrie, thanks.
Great, thank you again. So yes, what Lisa will just be bringing up here is a short presentation on our grant and aid services, or our rural community grant functions. So I'll provide a quick overview and then certainly be happy to answer any questions. So of course, these 5 services here are really kind of what drives our rural community grant program. So these provide funds to numerous nonprofits and charitable organizations across the Comox Valley. And those organizations have a variety of mandates, programs, and activities that are supported over the years. As you're aware, a review of all of our CVRD granting services and programs was completed back in 2020. And of course, the application and progress improvements have been noted, and there is a kind of a central portal available on our website for organizations to access to find more about those various granting programs. So this slide just provides, there we go. So just a bit on the work plan highlights. So in 2022, a total of 33 different organizations received rural community grants totaling $175,939. That was actually based on total asks from those organizations of just over $200,000. We did have available funding in 2022 of $290,000. So we did end up dispersing about 61% of the total grant funding available. And of course, any of that unspent grant dollars would have been brought over by way of surplus carry forward into 2023, which then results in us having a total of $318,000 in grant funding available to support various initiatives this year. This slide just gives a quick breakdown of the year-over-year available funds for the various areas. So as you can see, a total of 290 was available last year. With those carry forward availabilities, we're looking at about 318,000 this year. The one of note will be Electoral Area C, where we did have some significant carry forward that I'll speak to on the subsequent slide. And that's why there's a bit of additional dollars there. And this just provides a quick overview of the year-over-year change to the estimated residential tax rate and the tax impacts. And so again, as I spoke to around Area C, we are recommending a reduction in that requisition, given there's about $63,000 in unspent grant dollars available that we can bring forward into 2023, and therefore that allows us to keep the total available at about the same level as last year without having to requisition specifically for that. Other than that, the remainder of the requisitions are relatively unchanged year over year, and then we've provided the tax impact there. So as you can see, overall, we requisitioned for all 5 of the services, just over $253,000 last year. We're proposing to requisition just under $192,000 this year. So as far as next steps, any requested changes stemming from today's meeting, will be reflected in the 2023-27 recommended financial plan. That will also be with an additional just last check with respect to any surplus carry forwards and things of that nature. As I just noted in my previous kind of short presentation, the annual budget bylaw does need to be adopted by March 31st of 2023. And of course, the community grant application deadline is actually tomorrow, February the 28th, although we do also tend to receive applications throughout the year as well. However, anything received on or before that February 28th date, all those submissions will be distributed to the electoral area directors for your review and consideration via the director's intranet page. And then, of course, funding allocations are determined at a future meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee, with distribution, once those approvals are received, would be made to the recipients no later than August the 15th. And that's all I have for this report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kevin. Edwin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through to CEO to staff. Although I appreciate your concern about Area C and the carry forward, I would strongly recommend that we keep the requisition the same as previous years. This being because of the fact that we are just coming out of COVID, and many of these organizations are either operating at a reduced capacity or not operating at all. And I do anticipate that we will be getting more requests this year as well. I've never been aware that you can't carry forward excesses to the next year. It's not a nonprofit society, and we're not building an empire, but Yeah, I'm thinking that it's always good to have it in the kitty. We never know what's coming around the bend, but I do think there's going to be some renewed interest in some of these societies and some of the work they're doing. Because as we're coming out of COVID now, people are getting more out and about. So I'd like to keep it at the same requisition as last year. Thank you.
Thank you, and to Dr. Gray for these comments. A little bit of a different tack in my area, but for different reasons as well. I think we've, as I'm considering a number of special requisitions we're doing this year on Hornby and Denman for housing and the covered roof and different things. And the other thing that occurred to me is I'd like to align my three services with each other on a population basis. So I will actually ask that we reduce the requisitions for Hornby and Denman, creating a bit of savings for the ratepayers, and that all my communities be assessed at 0.015. Bainstown is currently at 0.0151. But let's just make them all consistent at 0.015, and so that way I'll carry forward. It'll create a bit of a saving, less money obviously for me to distribute on Hornby and Denman, but that's fine because we are contributing in other ways through other services. Thank you. And one further, since we're on that topic and there's not really room for it this month, is we heard about the $1 billion of transfer to regional districts and municipalities, but we haven't seen anything at this table around the impact or the potential use of those funds in addition to community works funds. We are about to complete budgeting processes without allocations made. Can staff clarify that? I thought the Premier had said that they would like to see allocation made prior to March 31st on those monies? And if so, what is the plan for, other than staff, for directors to consider potential allocations?
Thank you very much, Chair. The general managers and I are meeting tomorrow. We will prepare a list of all current capital projects, as well as develop a criteria or a weighting system that you might use. That will be brought forward to the electoral area directors sometime soon. We are waiting on a couple of things from the province. First and foremost, the amount that will be allocated and confirming any qualifications in terms of the purpose or use for the funds. But we are making assumptions now based on the press release and the information that has been provided. But as you're familiar, devil is in the details. So we await for something more formal and hope to have that at the same time that we bring forward those suggestions for you.
Kevin, did you want to add something there before I?
No, I think certainly Russell has covered it from that perspective. Maybe if I just to kind of summarize. So when we get to the recommendations, I've noted that we would be looking to increase the Area C requisition back to the 113 from the currently proposed 50, and then looking at for services 123 and 124, setting those estimated residential tax rate at 0.0175 per thousand.
Dr. Harbour?
0.0175 for both Denman and Hornby.
0.015.
Any other comments?
Spreadsheets are fun,
aren't they?
So going into vote on, are we doing vote on receipt of the report, or are we doing
vote on receipt and then consider recommendations or alterations?
Okay, so do vote on receipt of the report. Carrie?
Move recommendation 1 for Bainstown Area A with the rate at 0.015.
I'll move Area C.
Or whatever.
We'll do one at a time, right?
Yeah.
Carrie?
Vote on receipt.
So vote on
Vote
receipt.
on the motion.
Vote on the motion. Okay, so we're voted, we're good. Carried. Okay, then in area B, number 2.
That's the one we're moving.
Oh.
Move very easy. Yeah.
You're good with it as it is?
Good with it as it is, yeah. So a vote on. Carried.
I move I move recommendation, 4, 3, sorry,
Second.
with the provision that, the acquisition. Stays the same.
So we're in receipt of that, and then we're gonna vote.
Vote on that.
Carried. Thank you. Number 4.
Move forward with the rate set at 0.015.
Second.
Carried. Vote. Carried. Thank you.
Move 5 with the rate set at 0.015.
Second.
Carried. Vote. Carried. And item number 8.
Move receipt. House numbering.
Thank you. Carried.
Kevin, anything to say about that?
I actually just have a very quick verbal report for these very modest 3 services here. So of course, these are for our 3 electoral area house numbering services. These services were established way back in 1976 by statutory letters patent, and then were subsequently created as an extended service in 1999. So they've been with us for quite some time. As it can be illustrated, this is just to undertake general house numbering within the electoral areas. So included in here are very nominal contributions over to our electoral area planning service to allow resources to our JS service to accommodate that. For 2023, the total requisition across all 3 services combined is $2,528, and that's versus just over $2,500 last year. So as you can see, very modest contributions to help support that work. And that's really all I have.
Thanks, Kevin. So vote on report. Vote on receipt of report. Carried.
Move all 3 recommendations.
I'll do that.
These, yeah.
I'll second it.
So yeah, we're carried on receipt. Vote on all 3 recommendations. All carried. Thank you.
Move 9.
Second.
Carried.
And Kevin will do the presentation, but is also supported by Derry Monteith, who I think is online, if there's any specific questions on the work plan.
Thank you again, Russell, through the chair to the directors, and I'll just wait for Lisa to bring a short PowerPoint up here.
Technical difficulties, be with you shortly.
That's quite all right.
Meanwhile, let's count the snowflakes.
It was in the folder this morning, Lisa. Yeah, it was in the construction folder.
My grandmother used to say, blame the person that's not here to defend himself. So let's blame Derry. She's not here. Or do you want to move into the next item and we can deal with the 9 afterwards? That works. Just about there. No worries. Thank you for your patience, everyone. All right, Kevin. Back to you.
Thanks, Lisa. So yeah, I've just got a brief presentation to support the electoral area feasibility study services. That's functions 151 through 155. As Russell alluded to, I believe Derry's online as well to provide any input with respect to any of these programs that are initiatives specifically within these services within her purview, and then certainly will be available to answer any questions. So as the overview does indicate, these are the services that we use to do any analysis for the potential creation of future CVRD services within the electoral areas. These are strictly planning services and therefore do not include anything such as personnel costs, capital infrastructure, or reserves, or anything of that nature. If a feasibility study does result in a new service being created, then the expenditures incurred are subsequently recovered from that new service, as would be the case on the regional feasibility side that we'll be presenting tomorrow with respect to the regional park service. These services are funded mostly by modest annual tax requisitions, with year-over-year decreases being proposed in 3 of the 5 services here from 2022 that I'll be speaking to momentarily. In addition to the modest tax requisitions within these services, other funding can be supplemented, such as grant funding or community works funds for any larger studies when and if those funds are available. So jumping into function 151, which is area A, Bay and Sound, the estimated residential tax rate for 2023 is proposed to be 0.0105. That would result in a tax impact for a home assessed at $800,000 of $8.40. The big ticket item in this particular function continues to be a declining allocation of community works funds to support the extension of sewer services south. So what's been brought forward to date into 2023 is just over $590,000. Other 2023 work plan items here include union-based servicing framework work, as well as the electoral area watershed stewardship scoping study work that has been kind of weaning its way through the last 2 financial plans within this and the next 2 services, and we anticipate that work to kind of be wrapped up in early 2023. And Derry Monteith, our manager of liquid waste planning, did provide some overviews of the work being undertaken here when she presented the liquid waste management service through 40 a couple of weeks back. Looking at function 152 for area B, estimated residential tax rate for 23 is 0.0035. Tax impact would be about $2.80. And the sole 2023 work plan item identified here currently is the completion of that watershed stewardship scoping study work. For area C, residential tax rate in 23 of 0.0031, tax impact of $2.48. A few work items continue to be here. Liquid waste management studies. This is an ongoing carry forward of allocation with respect specifically to Saratoga Beach. We do continue to also have a small allocation here for Black Creek Oyster Bay with respect to the anticipated boundary expansion with the eventual inclusion of the Watuco system conversion. And then lastly, the watershed stewardship scoping study work. For Denman Island, residential tax rate of 0.0044. So that tax impact would be $3.52. And the sole item identified here currently is the Denman Island bulk water feasibility review. That has been an item that's been carried forward since 2019, and of course is tied to the recent conversion of the Graham Lake Improvement District and its interrelationship with our Denman Island water local service area. And then lastly, for Hornby Island, the estimated residential tax rate for 2023 is 0.0077. The tax impact would be $6.16. And currently we don't have any feasibility initiatives contemplated over the 5-year plan within this service. There we go. This slide just gives a bit of a snapshot of 4 of the 5 service areas here. So these are the kind of year-over-year budget comparisons. So as you can see, we are staying pretty static with respect to the requisitions in the Area A Bay and Sound service, as well as the 152 feasibility service for Area B. Given the amount of carry forward available, we have and the lack of any new feasibility projects being considered as part of this 5-year financial plan, we're proposing a decrease in the requisition for Area C. And then with respect to feasibility for Denman Island, a small reduction in that requisition as well, given the items that are currently within the financial plan or carry forward items that can be kind of funded that way. And then lastly, with respect to Hornby Island, looking at a modest reduction there, just again, given some of the additional prior year surplus that's available. So that's all I really have for these various services, but certainly welcome any questions.
Director Albert. Thank you. At the start of the budget process a couple of months ago, I said I'd be looking for savings in large services and in small services, and this is one of them. I think for Hornby and Denman, I would like to bring the requisition down to 0. There are no feasibility that, as the staff mentioned, over the next 4 years that I can see. In terms of Graham Lake, I think a lot of that work should be funded through that particular service or through grants, not necessarily from feasibility studies, which affect all residents. So part of my rationale too on these two is there's already a surplus that's carrying forward, which I think would allow for movement if we need to utilize some of the funds. Typically, feasibility studies on Hornby and Denman are $5,000-$10,000, and that's about what's in the pot right now in the reserve. So and then what that would do too is if we want to do a feasibility study for a new service, then we would have to plan in advance. We'd have to talk about it in advance, make a business case for it, and then budget it for the future year. For Bain Sound, I will keep it the same because you are correct. We have huge amount of work. The union-based servicing framework, I haven't seen a report on that since Mariah Fort left, which is a while ago. So I look forward to seeing something. And the servicing framework, I imagine it's for all the different things that we're looking at. So I will keep, and then obviously for switch. So I'm quite happy to leave the requisition as stated, but for Hornby and Denman, just bring it down to 0 unless staff has serious concerns around that approach.
Mr. Chair, not a serious concern, but one of the prospects with respect to the Graham Lake water service is the potential at looking at it being a bulk supply for the greater island. I don't know that we've actioned that, but it's a possibility for which some funds from the greater island might be advantageous if we go that way.
Yeah, thank you. And I see there's $12,000 available if we want to pursue that route to contribute to a project like that. Director Green.
Thank you. A question through the staff. This is the feasibility study in Area C. They're mentioning the Watuco water system, which is kind of stalled. The liquid waste management plan, which again is one of those plans that we need to rely on senior government support to get anywhere. But I'm just wondering, because there's some new potential development proposed, if it's wise to cut the requisition at this time. I know we've got, would that be coming out of this? Or is that something that would be considered already in process and being funded by another revenue source? Or I'm speaking specifically of the Saratoga Beach Estates.
Yeah, Derry, do you have any comment on that? Otherwise, Mark Rutten is here in the room and I can refer to him.
Oh, no, Derry.
Through the CEO and through the chair. Could I just get the question repeated, Director Grieve? Was it related to, is the Watuco study work going to move ahead, and is the liquid waste management plan going to move ahead?
Yeah, and the potential for, would this be the pot of money that we would use to look into the feasibility of new subdivision development up in the Saratoga Miracle Beach area, which is coming forward?
Yeah, the funds in this service are used to study the viability of the creation of new services. So for Watuco, it's really the bringing Watuco into an existing service. So I don't think that would apply. But for a new sewer service or stormwater service related to liquid waste management planning, that would be a use of these funds.
So I'm thinking we better keep that there, because this would entail maybe a revisiting of a sewer service for the area. So this would be the function where from which those funds would be drawn in.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, I would like to keep requisition the same.
Any other comments or questions? So vote on receipt of the report. Thank you. And then we have a number of different recommendations. All carried. Vote. Carried as well.
Second.
Carried. I'm good with the way things are, so vote. All carried. Thank you.
I'll move 3, second revision.
So 3, we have a revision.
With the revision.
With the revision. So we received.
And that was, again, you got it, Kevin? If you could just repeat it, thanks.
Yeah, so if I understand Director Grieve, we'd be looking at returning that requisition from the proposed 13,000 back up to 28,000. So bringing that back up $15,000.
Correct. This gives that buffer.
Okay. So vote on recommendation number 3 then. Carried. Thank you.
No 4. I can move 4 and 5 together.
Yes.
Director Robert.
I'll move that 4 and 5 be approved at a requisition of 0.
Receive.
I'll second.
Thank you. Carried. Vote. Carried.
Move receipt.
Of 10. Second.
Carried.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Chris LaRose is here with Mike Hirschmiller to present this report. And we've got a PowerPoint presentation we'll call up here too.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, through the through the CAO and the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, Mike and I have prepared a presentation to help guide us through the staff report and the 3 financial plans. So due to the high number of financial plans that you have going through the EASC, and also because of the similarities with these 3 services, we opted for a single report and presentation this year. So keen for any feedback on this approach, and happy to go back to separate reports if you preferred the previous model. So I'll start out with an overview of the services, and then we'll pass you over to Mike to provide an update on the work completed last year and what's ahead for this coming year. And then we'll walk through a summary of the proposed plans. So the first is the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area, function 305. So this service distributes bulk water from the Comox Valley water system and distributes to about 2,160 metered connections in the surrounding rural areas. So this area was previously 5 and then 6 separate service areas, which were all aggregated about 4 years ago, and joined into the pre-existing service 305 into a single rural area service area that wraps around, covering areas of all 3 electoral areas around the core settlement area. Several of those previously aggregated services still exist just for the purpose of collecting parcel taxes towards the equalization of reserve balances for those services. I believe the last one is expected to be complete in 2028. And the second one is the fairly recently converted Union Bay system. So at mid-2021, the Union Bay Improvement District converted to regional service. And so this system draws water from the Langley Lake watershed. It has approximately 680 properties within, firmly within the electoral area A, most of which fall within the Union Bay settlement node. And revenue for this service, as with the last one, is collected from a combination of parcel tax and user rates. And then the third service is the Royston Water Local Service Area, function 312. So this one was converted from an improvement district back in 2010. It provides water to about 900 or just over 900 connections in the settlement expansion area of Royston. It receives bulk water from the village of Cumberland, provides some level of treatment through chlorination before distributing it to the distribution system. And again, revenue for this service is collected through a combination of parcel tax and user rates. So these 3 services are managed by our CVRD water ops team, shown here on the slide. So we've got about 17 operators and technicians, clerk, that manage these 3 services, as well as the Comox Valley water system and several other rural area water services. The team's grown significantly over the last couple of years as we've finished our water treatment project plant. So that was 3 dedicated water treatment staff that have joined the team. And then with the conversion of Union Bay to regional services, we inherited 4 operators, which are now part of the larger team, all operating out of our new treatment plant and ops center up at the intersection of Lake Trail and Bevan. So Mike's here today to walk you through the 22 accomplishments and 23 work plan.
Thanks, Chris. To the CEO and to the chair. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, I will just be giving a quick summary of kind of year has been and what's to come in the next year. So for 305, Comox Valley Water Local Service Area, some operational updates. This is mainly a distribution system. Or not mainly, this is a distribution system. This doesn't have reservoirs or pump stations or any treatment facilities. So really our goal every year is just to make sure we complete all our annual maintenance, which is the basics of maintaining our infrastructure to make sure it'll work. The valves will shut, the hydrants will work when they're needed to. And then as well this year, fairly major task is updating our asset inventory using our CityWorks, our new CityWorks software. So that's the operators in the field taking their iPads when they're doing jobs. They're identifying assets. So we're marking all of our valves, all of our hydrants, basically all of our linear infrastructure in order to get it into our computer maintenance management system. Looking forward to 2023, there is some stuff happening. We're having as well as the regular maintenance we do. There is some work being done with the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. They're doing some paving on the road, on the highway, basically in the area that was referred to as Sandwick before. So we are doing some of the crossings under there because we don't want to be going back and if we have a break, because all of that stuff is basically at its serviceable end of life. So we are updating, renewing some of the services as well as the water, 2 of the water main crossings. And just the timing works because we'll be able to get some of that work done while they don't have the road paved, since that's one of the major costs of these repairs. Finley Creek is another area that we're going to be doing some repair work on a water main that's become exposed in the bottom, as well as the Lloyd Road water main replacement. Moving forward, 308 are Union Bay operational updates. In 2022, we completed our first year. We took them over in 2021 was when it merged in with our with the CVRD. That was in July 1st. So we kept it kind of running as is for that year, kept the operators down there, and then kind of amalgamated the team and started taking control of of our operations, took control of the water treatment plant and the distribution system starting 2022. So moving the staff up was great. It helped, create a more team environment. They were kind of a satellite team before, so that really has, it's done a lot, I think, for making it much more of a team feel. We've completed the washroom, some of the projects up there that were outstanding, a washroom and lunchroom at the water treatment plant. Did a very large reservoir maintenance and reservoir cleaning and flushing of the system. And then a thorough brushing and maintenance of the dam, and more to work come on the dam this year. But basically, we knocked down all the alders that were growing on the dam and did a real good brush job up there. And then again, with the city works and our iPads in the field, we're collecting assets to go into our GIS system. 2023, looking forward, complete the Third Street water main. The old reservoir site has to be removed and remediated. Both projects are well underway. And then the dam safety review and a reclassification. So we met up there with one of the dam safety officers from the province, and he's recommended us to do a reclassification, and we're going to do a dam kind of infrastructure assessment as well. And Royston 312. Final update from me. We have the PRV screen project, which we've been doing it through all the service areas. And basically what we're doing is we're just bringing the infrastructure up to near the surface of the manhole. So for our weekly maintenance, it's a lot more straightforward. Only one person can go. There's no confined space. So we're keeping people out of the holes when we can, getting the maintenance done, those weekly screen cleanings. And still, when we have to do our actual maintenance, we go down into the chamber and complete that. But this has really sped up the Friday screen cleaning projects. We've completed year 2 of 5 of the residential meter project, and of course all the annual distribution maintenance as well, and replaced a large flow meter in the transmission system that we pay to Cumberland. So we're noticing accuracy was end of life basically of the existing flow meter. So we've upgraded that. Looking forward, we've got some work to do in Herondale Reservoir. That's the reservoir at the south end of Royston. There's some bubbling on the floor. Some of the floor coating needs to be replaced, as well as some of the hangers inside the reservoir is corroded off. Noticed that during our last inspection. Year 3 of 5 of the residential water meter project, and Minto Road water main replacement, which is actually well underway as well. And actually, I think the tie-in is happening today, as well as just advancing the Comox Valley Water South project. And with that, I will hand it back to Chris.
Great, thanks, Mike. Great update. Yeah, before we dive into the details of the financial plan, just wanted to provide an update on some of the key planning projects or priorities for these 3 service areas. So the first one I wanted to mention is the Comox Valley Water System Water Master Plan. So this is for the broader regional service. This is a project plan to get started this year and finish next year. And there will be overlap with this system. Specifically with 305, so with the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area. So we'll be wearing both hats, walking through that planning process. The second one is the recently completed Union Bay Water Master Plan process that was completed late last year. So there's a number of implementation or action items that came out of that planning process that are now embedded into this financial plan, which we'll be kind of touching on a later slide. Also, the corporate energy and emissions reductions plan, so developed for the water department. We've identified a key energy audit or energy and emissions audit that will be done this coming year to help us prioritize or identify and prioritize projects for reducing energy emissions. There's the Royston conversion to regional water, so that's a very major project for the Royston water local service area, is in participation in the Water South Extension project and eliminating the reliance on the Cumberland water system. And then ongoing asset management planning. We've progressed most of these services fairly significantly. We plan to complete that this year and also get started on the Union Bay asset inventory and asset management system. And then finally, a key piece for all of these services is ongoing pressure on user rates. So the long delayed comprehensive rate and reserve review is anticipated to be completed this year and will feed into the next financial planning process. So starting off with a summary of the proposed financial plans. So starting with revenue. So significant increases are projected or included within the proposed budget for each of these three services, but particularly for Comox Valley and Union Bay. Increase in support services costs and inflation is affecting all of these services. And then in addition to that, for 305 for Comox Valley, we have a big step up in the regional bulk water rate, which is taking into effect this year. So this is coming off of a suppressed bulk water rate over the last 2.5 years as part of the COVID renewal plan. And then for 308 Union Bay, kind of an increase in spending required from the various action or implementation items that were identified under the Water Master Plan, including getting started with an asset management program or plan for this service. So as I mentioned on the last slide, we do have a comprehensive rate and reserve review plan for the coming year. It has been delayed several years, which but we do see a need for engagement with the public. So that was one of the reasons why it was made difficult by the pandemic, just the difficulty of consulting in public or with the public, but also in an effort to try and to keep the rates down while people are struggling to recover and bounce back from the pandemic. And finally, what I wanted to mention for the water local service area review requirements is that we do have a plan to bring forward a bill stuffer to residents over the next month and a half to let them know, what and why to expect in terms of revenue. So I think that was it on the revenue piece. Next, in terms of personnel costs. So just to summarize the year-over-year totals for salaries and wages for both services, just showing the approximate projected percent increase for each of these services, and then a revised column. So we have identified a minor error in terms of allocation of operators between services. So we propose to correct that between now the proposed budget and the recommended budget, which will be coming forward in a couple of weeks. And so the revised values show a slight increase above what was projected in your plan, in the proposed plan for Comox and Royston, and then a significant reduction for Union Bay. So just a reminder that for our practice is that only actual time is billed to each water local service area. So these are just projections. But those increases are attributable to a 0.4 additional operator to the team in 2023, which the error was that that was allocated to Union Bay, when in reality it would be allocated to the broader service areas and then allocated based on our typical distribution between services. And then in addition to that, some shifting interdepartmental allocations. So like I said, our plan is to reflect these in the recommended financial plan. And I think that those revised numbers highlighting the significant step down for Union Bay just highlights that we are seeing a decrease in operator time being allocated to or incurred by Union Bay. And we are planning to undertake a detailed operator allocation review in 23. And what that will, because like I said, we only bill for time spent per service, that operator allocation review will help inform our projections, our annual projections moving forward. But at the end of the day, won't impact the actual costs incurred by each of these services because that's billed, we bill only at time spent. And for operating costs, so again, this table compares year over year for each of the 3 service areas, highlighting the change in dollar value and percent. So as I mentioned on the earlier slide, all of these services are affected by support services increase, the return to pre-pandemic spending and inflation. Across the board, we're seeing pretty steep increases in the cost for contracted services, in particular relating to main repairs, chemicals, power, and a range of other items that are seeing the inflationary pressures. Additionally, for Comox Valley, we have the increase in bulk water rate and the cost of Sandwick decommissioning. For Union Bay, development of the asset management inventory, the other action items from the water master plan, a development cost charge study to update our development cost charges, and then dam and reservoir studies for that system. And just to note that between the proposed and recommended budget, there will be a slight reduction in the Union Bay and Royston 23 costs. As we've kind of dug into the planning this year, we've identified a couple items after nailing down the proposed budget, which will allow us to spread the costs out a little bit between 23 and 24, hence that slight reduction in the recommended budget for a couple of the professional fees. And then from a capitalist perspective, this table here on this slide just summarizes the total anticipated capital for each 3 services over the coming 5 years. You can see that really we're just looking at projects over the next 3 years with nothing anticipated in the latter 2. For Comox Valley, as Mike mentioned, we've got the Lloyd and Astra Road water main project and the Sandwick decommissioning. Union Bay, the decommissioning of the old reservoir, finishing the 3rd Street water main, and initiating a preliminary design for the water treatment plant phase 2, which will be funded by others, but it's included here. And finally, for Royston, we've got the Minto Road fire flow improvements. We've got the water meter replacement program that Mike mentioned, the conversion to regional water. We may be in a position to start the detailed design towards the end of this year for that project. And then the Herondale and Trent Road projects. And just to note that for the Royston conversion to regional water project, so the proposed financial plan includes the pre-existing $500,000 of community works funds that were previously allocated by the EASC, plus another 335 for 24 that we plan to bring forward a separate for a recommending motion as part of a dedicated report on this project soon. Just wanted to flag that. And then finally, second to last slide, reserves. Just a note here on where we sit for each of these services. So no apologies for all the numbers on the slides here, but so the top table just compares the anticipated annual reserve balances for each of these 3 services. And then for the second table, I've just flagged what annual contribution we're projecting at this point for these services. And then the third and final one at the bottom highlights or compares these 3 services based on the projected reserves per property. And I've highlighted several of those cells in red just to highlight those where we feel are dropping to pretty critical levels. So from a total reserve balance, Union Bay and Royston from a contribution perspective, Union Bay and Royston are much lower than we'd like to see for a service of these services of these types. And then in Royston in particular, with the delivery of the anticipated delivery of the Royston regional conversion project, it dips down to pretty minimal levels. And then to close, just to kind of summarize in terms of the 4 corporate strategic drivers. From a fiscal responsibility perspective, asset management remains a high priority for all of these pre-existing and new services. We will be undertaking the detailed rate analysis in 23, and we're committed to working together to achieve a sustainable rate structure, and which balances the interests of current and future users of the services. From a climate crisis and environmental stewardship perspective, all systems are fully metered and utilize conservation rate structures to help limit their respective impacts, on their respective drinking watersheds. From a community partnership perspective, these services they fall within all 3 of the electoral areas and are managed through this collaborative committee. And then finally, from an Indigenous relations perspective, management of these services involves close communication with the KFN Chief and Council on all relevant initiatives, and we remain committed to delivering projects in compliance with the KFN Cultural Heritage Policy. So that's it from us, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Director Harbour. Thanks, Chair, and thanks to staff. And Chris, I love that you're still amongst the only staff, if not the only one, that consistently finishes with that slide, the link back to our 4 drivers as a board. That's awesome. However, I did not have a good weekend with this report. I don't like that we brought those 3 services into one report. It made it very hard for my brain to jump, especially because the narrative of each report kept intermingling. Meanwhile in Union Bay, meanwhile in Royston. And so even in talking or communicating with my Union Bay residents, because as you know, they care about the water system, it makes it impossible to have some kind of summarized, as you did in the slide. The slides were good. The report itself, too much jumping around. I would propose that we return next year to a presentation of each budget on its own merit. So with that said, let me get into just some of my questions. I'll start just with Royston. I just have 2, so that's pretty light. One is just because it was brought up here, the Kentwood thing, like it doesn't make sense to do that just as we're about to transfer from Cumberland Water. Maybe because it's at end of life for the metering, and I'm like, is this an asset that will be used for the Comox Valley water system as well?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, that's, I mean, fair point. The meter was done and it needed to be replaced because we still have another probably two and a half years.
It was done.
Where we're still, yeah, it was not reading, so it needed to be replaced.
Got it.
But it's a good point. And what we do when we do decommission stuff is we do use what we can reuse, and that meter will be reused somewhere in Royston.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the projected budget for the Royston service, that's my only other question for Royston. In regards to the parcel tax, we're seeing the jump in the CVWS service. So once Royston joins that service, have we anticipated a major jump in their parcel tax, or otherwise we see a huge jump in the, so what will happen to, right now we got it 0% change in the parcel tax for the Royston service and 9% in the operation. So I'm just wondering, seeing such a large jump in the Valley system, whether we're anticipating that there'll be a similar jump in a couple of years once we get to that bridge.
I think they're very different services. I don't think there's anything inherent to the conversion or that will drive that parcel tax. That being said, we do have some work as part of the asset management planning to develop some kind of clear internal guidelines for how to split revenue requirements between parcel tax and user rates to make sure we're as consistent as possible between these services. So I think I can say that, Daniel, that Director, that that definitely expect some some stronger kind of consistency between the services in terms of parcel tax to user rate ratio moving forward.
Okay, thanks. That'll be good to get some interim report maybe as we approach that around what's proposed. And then for Union Bay, I may have I may have 2 or 3 questions, which normally I wouldn't feel guilty about because it'd be its own report, but I feel like I'm taking time on the mic. On the operating expense, so obviously a bit of a jump, but I'm trying to figure out some things that are not addressed in the report is, when we talk about the water treatment plant upgrade to phase 2, if you want, wish. Obviously, that's one of the cost drivers, but the assumption I think in the community is the developer is going to cover all of those costs. So I'm wondering why we are seeing an increase in those fees now when the assumption is that the developer will cover all of these costs. So that's one question.
Sure. So I think the question was, I guess the phase 2 treatment costs are included in the plan, but do not contribute. So they are funded by others. So they aren't contributing to this bottom line kind of percent increase. So the majority of that, or all of it, is related to, for the most part, those action items coming out of the water master plan. So the development of the asset management inventory, the DCC study, the dam and reservoir studies. We've got a leak kind of reduction study that's called for as well.
Okay, I was going off page 7, which shows engineering fees 308,366 going from 10,000 to 80,000. So what you're saying is, even though it says water treatment plant phase 2 currently there's a preliminary design, it's more the latter that are.
Yeah, so sorry, that you're right. So for that variance table, that 10 to 80,000, the 30K for the or 20 or 30K for the phase 2 is included there, but it's not being funded by the service. It's not attributed to the increases are not attributed to that specific project.
Okay, and overall, I mean, the question I got in Union Bay when I posted on Saturday, the main question that people had was, apples to apples, our promise of apples to apples, and what I kind of suggested is the asset management is a lot of the driver around those costs, because people are saying, would we have seen those increases if it had stayed as the improvement district? And what I see is we're starting to contribute to that asset management plan, and that is reflected in the rates, and we'll have a fuller report next year on that. But there's things that I can't quite jive in my mind when you say there's a reduction in the staffing hours. But so that means that the other professional fees, the 10,000 to 100,000, that is all linked to asset management planning as well. Is that correct?
No. So asset management. So really, what we have on the work plan for this coming year in terms of asset management is taking the first step, developing a robust inventory. So that's just a detailed list of everything we have, the year it was built, the material, when we expect it to need to be replaced. That first step. Further asset management work will come in subsequent years. The rest of that cost is relating to action items that come out of the water master plan, like understanding how, for example, the McKay Reservoir study. What we know so far is that it's not contributing very well to the service. We need to understand how it's working, how it should be working, and what modifications are needed for that system. The water master plan also highlighted that 41% of the water that comes out of that treatment plant is not being sold to customers. 41%. So we have a leak reduction study that's planned so that we can understand where is that water going, how do we reduce it and free up capacity at the treatment plant. So these are items that examples, the big examples that came out of that planning exercise, which is integral to us taking over the system. So would these costs have been incurred if conversion hadn't occurred? I think they should have been. But the reality is we are operating it now. And we've committed to operating it in a consistent manner with our other water services.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair to the directors, yeah, if I can just kind of help support Chris here. So yeah, there are a number of items, as Director Arbor alluded to, that are included in our other professional fees, both in 2023 and 2024. And some of those are certainly, you know, like longer standing items. And obviously you're aware of my history with that particular service. You know, the DCC study, that is definitely overdue. I believe, based on my memory, the DCCs or the capital expenditure charges in that realm were last reviewed somewhere around 2015. So we're definitely in due for a review of those. The dam recommendation study as well. That is kind of an outstanding item coming over from the improvement district. It was flagged with some criticality to address some of the issues with respect to any potential future dam breaches that could occur with respect to that service. So there's definitely some funds allocated towards that. And then also with the leak reduction it is something that continues to be a bit of a concern there. So we have allocated some dollars in 2024 at this point to look at finally coming to some resolution to that issue.
Thanks. And just one final one for me, still on the union-based service. Can you go back to the capital slide? Because it's not unanticipated, but it's a surprise that just after the water treatment plant is up, we're already looking at the twinning. Not that one, the one that had the numbers on it. It showed 1 million, almost 1.2 million each year. Yeah, you're getting close. Oh, good. Anyways, for the it's basically 4 or 5 million, the twinning that's identified for Union Bay, which is the same cost as what they paid for the initial plan. So that's a big number for a small community. Yeah, 1.3 and then 4 million. Oh, you just had it for a second. That was great. So again, to provide some assurance that we're not, you know, can you reconfirm what the share of that 5 million will belong to the developer and what share will belong to the existing users? Because this will create a bit of dialogue in the community. I know that.
Yeah, no, understood. So yeah, the updated cost estimate, we're just in the process of firming that up is still in the order between $4 and $5 million. So our assumption based on the potable water agreement that we inherited between the previous UBID and UBE is that the full cost of that system will be borne by the developer, so not incurred by the existing users of the service.
Thank you for putting that on the public record. That helps me.
So any more questions? Want to receive the report? Carried. And we have some recommendations as well. All right.
Second.
Carried. Vote on recommendation number 1. Or did you want to?
Is this the Comox Valley system?
Yes.
Oh yeah, right.
So you're voting? Carried. Then we're going to recommendation number 2. Thank you. Carried. Vote. Recommendation number 2. Carried. Thank you. Carried on 3. Vote on number 3. Thank you.
Second, sorry.
Carried on receive of number 4. Going to vote. Carried. Thank you. We got number 11, Grand Lake Water Local Service Area, function 310. Thank you. Carried.
Chris LaRose.
Chris, back to you.
Another meeting, so James will be here.
Have fun.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Thank you, Russell, and through the chair. So this report was brought forward at the previous meeting of the EASC and referred back to staff for further consideration of the contribution of community works funds towards the water treatment project. So the report on your agenda remains unchanged except for an adjusted motion proposing that the $200,000 of community works funds that were previously allocated to that project be removed from the plan pending the results of the further assessment of options for the treatment project. So we are planning to report back to the committee in April with the results of that assessment, and we can address funding at that time.
Oh. Thanks, Chair or Vice Chair. Yeah, so I guess following last meeting, just to note that I am getting some residents contacting me about this, and yeah, I think the sooner we have a community session, the better in terms of engagement. I've yet to hear from anyone who is in favor of proceeding with this capital project. So most of the contacts that I'm getting are not in favor. So I think the sooner we address the community in a comprehensive manner, the better. And as for the alternatives, I facilitated a session at FCM last week on water infrastructure. And we had our committee, about 20, 30 people from across Canada. And big municipalities like Montreal, obviously having their own problems, smaller municipalities, but the voice that ended up the loudest was rural areas that manage systems between 4 homes and 500 or 1,000, where I think there's a crisis in the policy across Canada around the financial viability of all these systems. I heard from somebody in the Kootenays that has 180 small system, all in need of meeting regulation, somebody in Ontario, somebody in PEI. This is a national problem that we're facing. And Union Bay is, it's pretty small, but Graham Lake is just at 100, just the financial feasibility. And so I think we discuss a bit the need for revising regulation or the government approach or the support approach. And one of my colleagues noted that exactly a bit like the discussion we had last time, that if you are an individual homeowner in a rural area, you have no regulation. You got your well, there's a well regulation, I guess, but there's no standard around the quality of the water that you drink. And as soon as you get behind 4, it's like the hammer comes down with all the policies that apply to major systems. So I think we're going to have to get creative using this service in terms of the discussion, inviting Island Health, engagement around MLA. I think we're going to need some pretty strong advocacy, because it's not what I discovered. It's not just provincial, it's across the board. And it's crazy that with a $1.3 million grant, we can't solve the problem of 100 homes. It's so disappointing. So anyways, long story short, I am in support of both recommendations. And I think that the sooner we go to the community around Graham Lake, the better. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clearly, this is a provincial regulatory issue. And when they first brought in the Drinking Water Protection Act, there was a lot of people in the Kootenays, in these small water service areas, that tried to work through UBCM with the government, and like I said, yeah, good luck. Maybe keep trying the same thing again and again and expect a different result.
Thanks. You just trigger further comment. Depending on how the community session is and the feedback in the community, like this is something I can really, I saw Cumberland around their sewage basically become in breach of the regulator and getting warnings and all that. I see a possibility of that with this system. I would rather maintain the status quo until we get some positive answers from the province, Island Health and others, than to commit residents to such an enormous financial impact. This being said, That's my opinion. I know it's shared by others, but that's why I want the full community consultation to see how much of a fight people want to put up or whether there's other recommendations that can be made.
Any other comments, questions? So we'll vote on receipt of report. Carried. And then we have recommendations. So where do we want to go with the recommendations, Director Robert?
Second.
Thank you, carried. So we received, now we're gonna vote. Carried, thank you. Carried, vote. Carried, thank you. Into number 12.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alana Malili will be introducing the staff report on the Heritage Conservation Services.
Welcome, Alana.
Thanks very much, Director Hardy. Through the chair to the directors. This report and presentation outline our 5 heritage conservation services throughout the electoral areas. Oh, just one moment, please. Just as a bit of a background, I just wanted to flag that if a regional district, unlike a municipality, wants to undertake any kind of heritage conservation planning work, then we need to we need to establish a service. So that's what these 5 heritage conservation services represent. Our services have been used to provide funding to nonprofit organizations in order to undertake cultural heritage conservation initiatives. So in the past, this has included conservation of built heritage, natural heritage and landscapes. It has also included conservation work for specific artifacts, as well as for celebratory arts and culture events. Allocation of dollars within this service allow you an opportunity to consider allocations relative to your strategic drivers, namely the opportunity to build or support community partnerships, opportunities to think about the work that could be undertaken to help decolonize our community's understanding of cultural heritage in the Valley, and ultimately opportunities to provide support for the conservation of historic places, those places that hold value to our community members. Revenue within each service is derived almost entirely from tax requisition. Grant funding, if and when available, can be used to augment that requisition. And then otherwise, surplus funds are carried forward to the following year. So this is where we sit for this year. No increases are proposed over 2022 levels. I'm just going to jump ahead a few slides here to show you. I've had to put the comparison tables on 3, so just let me know if you'd like me to pop back to any. But ultimately, the common denominator with these services, you see requisition, you see carry forward of prior year surplus, and you also see not much happening on the operating side with the exception of Hornby, which I'll get to in a moment. You'll also note that there are no personnel assigned to any of these services, and rather staff within the electoral area planning function respond to any work needs within these services. So here is for A and B. You'll see they're both sitting with relatively sizable amounts that could be allocated as initiatives or projects come forward. Oops, sorry. And there, oops, did I miss C? Oh, I never forget C. There it is. It's with Denman. So I hopped forward quickly through A and B. C, Denman. And then finally Hornby. Okay. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so in 2002, you agreed to allocate funding in the amount just over $23,000 to the Brant Oyster River Hermitage Society in order for that group to undertake some work to protect the archives. And we have a funding agreement in place with the society that runs until May of this year regarding the use of those funds. So far in 2023, we've only received a request for funding for one project, and that's coming from the Hornby Island Residential Ratepayers Association, who is seeking to undertake a statement of significance project for the Hornby Community Hall property. Just briefly, development of a statement of significance is a key step in the conservation of an historic place. It is a written record of the cultural heritage value that the authors of the statement are assigning or recording for that place at a given moment in time. And these are to be prepared in accordance with Canada's standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places. Whoops. Okay, so to bring you to Hornby with that allocation, the proposal is to allocate $5,000 from operating in 2023 to grant to this group in order to undertake that work. And then certainly, if any other, as I said, if any other requests come forward, then that we would come back to you and you could allocate those dollars accordingly. But ultimately, we recommend that you support these 5 budgets as proposed and that you authorize staff to work with HERA to sign a funding agreement to allocate that $5,000 ask. Thank you.
Director.
Yeah, thanks. And it's good to see that HIRA has decided to pursue that initiative of a statement of significance. The Hornby Hall is pretty unique in its architecture and feel, and it is at a time of its life where I think the community should either commit to the long term with it or start looking at alternatives. I agree with HIRA that we should look at the long term, and I think a statement of significance will entrench that facility as something that needs to be preserved for future generations. On a side related note, this weekend we'll have groundbreaking for the Art Center, which as Dr. Greg may recall, we provided a recommendation a few years ago. The whole project got a bit delayed by COVID, so the money's still sitting out there in our community works allocations, and our MLA is going to attend as well on Saturday on Hornby. So I very much look forward to that groundbreaking session. And it's also a named facility in that service. So maybe in 50 years, they'll look for a statement of significance. In regards to the Denman and Bain Sound budget, I'm looking a bit like the feasibility study. The Bain Sound, I think we've contributed to the post office building in the past. The requisition is now sitting at 25,000. There's no projects identified in the near term. So for Denman, Bain Sound, unless we have thoughts, I'm just wondering if we could bring those requisitions just to zero and let those reserves sit.
Through Mr. Chair to the directors, you most certainly could, if that was the choice at this time, as there aren't any requests outstanding. And then certainly if there are, they could still draw on these funds that exist as carry forward surplus.
Yeah, thank you. So for based on staff advice, I will bring down both requisition for Area A and for Denman Island to zero, recognizing that there are surpluses if should immediate needs arise. Otherwise, we can budget in future years.
Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. Vote on receipt of report. Carried. And then we're into recommendation number 1.
One with the rate set at 0.
Second.
Carried. Then vote.
Vote and carried.
Sorry. Yeah.
Move 2.
2 is B. I'll second that.
Carried. Vote. Carried.
There you go.
3. Move 3.
How can I get more money?
As presented. Oh, no,
I'll second.
Sorry. 3 is C, yeah.
Second.
Carried. Vote. Carried. Number 4.
Move 4 set at 0.
I'll second that.
Carried. Vote. Carried. Number 5.
Move 5 as presented.
Yeah, okay.
Carried.
Second.
Vote. Carried.
Move 6 as second.
Okay, I'll second that.
Carried. Vote. Carried.
And on to 13, moved.
Carried.
Lucky for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Michael Zabarski is here to present the staff report on the street lighting services. Mike's our manager of transit and facilities. Mike.
Thanks, James. And I have a presentation here. Okay. Thanks for having me through the chair to the committee. So a bit of an overview on the budgets for street lighting services functions 710 to 750. CVRD administers quite a few service areas, 12 in fact, over the region, and there's about 445 lights. All of these are owned by Hydro, except for 8, which are in the Forest Grove Estates subdivision. And these are actually an ornamental light rather than a street light. The image on the screen there, and it kind of shows you what those look like. All the lights now are LED, which is really good from an energy efficiency and greenhouse gas perspective. The lighting services are included in our corporate energy plan, but they represent a very small contribution to our annual inventory. And with that recent conversion to LED of the BC Hydro lights, we've had a number of complaints from residents about light trespass. From what we've kind of seen in the research, primarily this is resulting because the brand new lights are brand new and they're a lot brighter than the old lights, which were decades old. They would have been equivalent to the old lights when they were new, if that makes sense. So the old high pressure sodium lights, when they were installed, were at a similar brightness as the current LED lights. But we have received a number of complaints, and the board has taken an advocacy, or sorry, this committee has taken an advocacy role, starting with a letter to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. They're the ones responsible for BC Hydro. And the advocacy is that BC Hydro rectify the light trespass concerns that are related to BC Hydro's LED conversion. This table here shows the residential tax rates for all of the service areas, and you can see that they vary from service to service, primarily based on the number of lights within the service, the wattage of each light, and then also the number of properties that are contributing to those services. The work plans, a bit of highlights from last year are most of our year was spent addressing light trespass concerns. We also had a lot of work to do with BC Hydro around billing errors. So when BC Hydro did the LED light conversion, they also did an inventory of all the lights. And we noticed that there was some discrepancies between what they said we had on the ground and what we were getting billed for. In most cases, they were billing more than we actually had. And that's reflected in the budgets as well. I'll talk about that in a second. There was some annual maintenance that we did on our Forest Grove Estates lighting as well. In 2023, we're going to continue to support the advocacy efforts around light trespass, and we'll also be bringing forward some expenditure reserve establishment bylaws. A number of the services already have these expenditure reserves, but some of them don't. And this is something we can use from year to year to pay for unplanned expenditures, offset requisition in the future. So those are some things we want to do. We also do have some surpluses coming from last year, primarily as a result of those billing errors where we got credits and bill reductions based on what we had budgeted for. So that will be a piece of work that happens this year. And this slide shows the tax requisition comparisons across the service areas and compares the 2022 and 2023 requisitions, showing the variances. And in most cases, you'll see that the requisitions are down this year, and that's based on that billing error issue. So in most cases, we were being overbilled, and now we've updated everything with BC Hydro's billing department and are going to see reduced bills and thus reduced requisition requirements. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Harbour.
Thanks, Mike. There was at the regional table, or maybe here, there was a comment that we were semi-consulted on the lights. I think you made that comment that at one point we provided basic guidance. Can you clarify that? Because you made a quick comment, because for me, it would change the potential effectiveness of our advocacy.
So when BC Hydro was rolling out their LED replacement program, they did consult us as the customer and requested that we pick either a 3000 or a 4000 Kelvin, which is the color temperature of the light, and that we pick a 39 or 75 watt LED. And we did not have any expertise in kind of lighting design, so we referred that to Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and they are the ones that selected a 4000 Kelvin and a 75 watt.
Right. And so I think that will seriously limit the potential impact of our advocacy, the fact that we did have an option to weigh and provide ourselves with our own expertise rather than to defer back to the Ministry of Transportation. Yeah, if I was a decision maker at that level, I would say, well, you had your chance. But this being said, we can always say we don't have the expertise and we did rely on you. So, because I was going to propose maybe we can have our leadership request a UBCM meeting on that, because what applies to us will apply to others. It'd be good to know if other jurisdictions are pursuing the same and if they're getting the same answer from BC Hydro. If there's many of us, that might change the nature of the advocacy, rather than if it's just our jurisdiction, then maybe it's just that we didn't do our full homework on this. So yeah, that'd be my only comments today. When you present an advocacy plan for that those things be factored in. One quick question: the Denman rate is the first year you presented that table of the cost per participant. So I guess on Denman, the other table prior, that one. So 152, everyone's like, it's the only one that really stands out at the top there. Is it because there's very few user, and is it the businesses downtown that contribute? That's why it's a higher rate per.
Yeah, it's definitely very few users,
Yes.
and it is in that kind of downtown and towards the ferry terminal.
Yeah, so it's
I don't
probably
know if them being a commercial entity changes the rate. Maybe Kevin can.
I would love to see, just if I can be forwarded a service area for it, but then I'll be able to tell which properties are in and whether it's unreasonable or if others should.
Lisa, do you have the staff report? There's a map in the appendix of the staff.
No, in the
report.
appendix, I'll search it up then. Thank you very much.
It's in
Thanks,
there.
Chair.
Yeah.
I did have a question, and I think we chatted a bit about this the last time we had a conversation about this, was in regards to the light shields. And do we have any idea what the cost would be to acquire those light shields? I mean,
Well,
all should the cost
unfortunately,
associated with the shield itself, and then it's putting the shield on to the light afterwards, right?
yeah, we're kind of stuck with that one because BC Hydro doesn't offer the light shield. So trying to get accurate cost estimates for what the shield would cost to procure and install has been challenging. But we have heard from a lighting contractor in the Comox Valley that they're about $500 to purchase and install, and that they have done that on municipally owned streetlights. But everything else that we do with the street lighting, we do it through BC Hydro, and so every other cost we get, it's provided by BC Hydro, and they at this point are unwilling to offer that solution, and so are unwilling to price it for us. And I know a number of communities are inquiring about those light shields as well.
So if I could, follow-up question would be in regards to, you said there are different options with regards to light colors, 4,000 versus 2,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just if I could, so with those options, I mean, I'm assuming not every neighborhood is in, putting forward concerns and issues with regards to light trespassing, right? There's probably, 10 neighborhoods and throughout the whole entire valley that maybe have concerns. Like it would be, I guess where I'm going with this is, if we have neighborhoods that have concerns and issues with light trespass, can we change out the ball? Which maybe it addresses the issue or not, I don't know. And if so, what would the cost be?
Yeah, so it's not so much at a neighborhood level that we're hearing about, it's more on a kind of individual property or homeowner level. And we've got a kind of ongoing record of all the complaints we've received. And, we're in the like 15 to 20 kind of range. We're not talking about the entire community. BC Hydro has told us that CVRD as the customer can ask them to make changes to the lighting, whether it's to change the wattage down to 39 watts, change the color to a warmer 3000 Kelvin, tilt the lighting, put it on a different arm. There's a number of things that can be done. The challenge that we have is that we don't have the expertise on picking those design changes, because these are roadway lights and there is a safety concern. I think we should be very kind of cautious about making changes. Not only could it affect the roadway safety, but it also could, spread the light trespass concern from one owner to the guy across the street, for example. And so an option that I've seen in other communities has been to hire an engineer or a consultant in roadway lighting, and they would review on a case-by-case basis the lighting question and recommend the design changes that they feel would kind of be the least risk, or not impact the neighbors. And so it's hard to really know what the costs would be of those changes, but I will give you one example from a nearby community, Qualicum Beach, that have gone with just a straight change to a 39 watt, and I believe they're around $1,200 per light fixture. That's the whole light, not just they can't change the bulb with these ones.
Thanks. Director Green?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we took great pains to put dark sky policies and no light trespass wording into both the RGS and our OCP, but it always gets lost. It's even on the commercial side when people put lights on the side of their commercial buildings and stuff. So we have to be a little more vigilant going forward. The good news is that these lights too will dim in time. So.
Any other comments? So vote on receipt of report. Carried.
Move recommendation 1.
Second.
Carried. Vote. Carried. Thank you. Oh, there's number 2.
Second.
Thank you. Carried. Vote on number 2. And carried on number 2.
Go on camera. No, we have new business.
We do have new business, if you recall. And you were going to put forward a resolution of some sort.
I'm trying to recall the two of you, whether it was for Moti or for the white delegation.
I think Kevin had written it down for you. Keep up over there, Kevin.
The IAPC findings going back to years.
The Ag APM.
Mr. Chair, I believe that this topic relates to the second delegation from Mr. White, in subdivision and property development, and request that the findings from the agricultural APC, as it takes a look at the presentation today, those findings be returned to the EASC when available.
I'll move that.
And there is no application before the CVRD at this time, right? But the presentation itself would be referred to the agricultural APC for the members.
I'll move precisely that.
Yeah.
Just making sure we got the language proper here for these.
And report back to the EASC.
Report back to the future. Richard said. There you go. Okay.
So we're good with that? So we voted on, there was a motion and we're all carried with the motion and now we're going to vote on it. Carried, thank you.
Move that we adjourn to in camera.
Going in camera. There's section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent or regional district or another position appointed by the regional district.
Could have been a lawyer.